POV Ashton _. A few days have passed since I've met my student and entered his little game. It's been an extremely quiet period. I gave up on meeting with the Zodiacs. My student already told me enough about the ship. I no longer need to look for Cheetle. I also didn't really bother looking for the clown. I only said I'd keep an eye out for him, so I will do just that. I take a trip looking at the entire ship every day. If I happen to spot him, I will capture him. If not, then it's none of my business. Killua also probably realized that this is what I meant. Not that it matters too much for him. From what I've seen, he's not all that worried about their traitor. He seems a tad bit more concentrated on the treasure of the Kakan Empire, which he has yet to involve me into. I wonder how he's planning to transition me giving him help with the traitor into me helping him steal a national treasure. Well, I'd have a few ways to go about it. But I don't really think he's as skilled as me when it comes to plotting. I guess he will choose one of the more obvious ones. Like me taking the blame for the stolen treasure or something of that sort. It would work especially well since I've already been seen together with several members of the fandom troupe. Well, whatever he does, it's highly unlikely that I will be too surprised by it. Now, I am wandering around on one of my routine walks around the ship. Why do I take such walks? Well, I am bored. That's as good an explanation as any. I am currently around the 3rd floor, which I also think is the last floor with any semblance of security in the entire ship. There have already been crimes, muggings and all of that jazz in the lower tiers. But that's to be expected when you don't provide structure to society. Humans are, at the core, an extremely violent species. I'd even wager to say they are more aggressive than any other. These crimes are just people choosing to follow their desires, which is quite harmful to the rest of them. Really, this ship feels more and more like a social experiment with each passing day. Segregate people into social classes, don't provide any protection or healthcare to the lower ones, whilst the rich get everything. Watching the lower classes struggle against each other whilst the rich enjoy their peace and quiet. Quite a good reminder to the people that, no matter where they go, they will always be underneath the rich and powerful. It's a bit of a shame, but there isn't much one can do. Not when they can't even protect themselves properly. I've seen the Zodiacs running around the ship, trying their best to properly distribute guards. Cheetle trying to plead with the ones on top to get medical staff to the lower tiers. But it seems the rich folks aren't quite so generous as to help out the lower tiers. They only managed to get around 8 more doctors to the lower levels. Which is nowhere near enough for 180,000 people. If they are to actually help, they need some motivator, maybe a threat. But no one on this ship, besides me, is able to threaten the upper class to that extent. And I don't really feel like interfering with their business all that much. At least not now. I want to observe the situation a bit more. Whilst walking, I couldn't help but get a strange feeling. I was being followed. The person doing so was quite proficient. I didn't show any reaction, only started heading for a less populated zone. As soon as I stepped foot in that empty corner of the ship, a card came flying towards my head at great speeds. I simply tilted my head to the side, narrowly avoiding the preemptive attack my assailant released. Then I proceeded to turn around slowly, looking at the empty walkway behind me. I sighed a bit. Hide and seek, huh? My quiet voice wasn't really enough to get a response out of my attacker. A strange man appeared in front of me, clown makeup, red hair, a tear and a star. The traitor of the troupe. The man I was looking for, coming at me by himself. I couldn't help the smile on my face. Hey, let's play a game. Can you dodge faster than I can throw? As soon as he said that, sharpened cards were launched towards me from every direction. It seems he's prepared this place beforehand, but I guess there aren't all that many secluded places on the ship. He likely just wagered a guess after seeing my usual route. I did feel like I was being tailed a few times in the past, but I didn't care much. This is the first time he actually attacks me. A card game, huh? I said with a sweet smile on my face. I held my breath and stopped my heart as all of the cards passed through me and hit each other, all eventually falling on the ground. I was bombarded continuously for at least 20 seconds. He started speaking again. "TSK. It seems you are a decent player. Too bad I got to choose the table." "Oh, I see," I said out loud as my smile widened a bit. I quickly used Go. I could see the entire place covered in strands of purple nen. I guess he really prepared for this. Too bad he's facing me. The strands of his nen are all around the room. They seem to be constantly moving and forming a spider web around my body. They were slowly closing in on my body. The man seemed to be waving his hands around, as the elasticity of his aura was being shown to its greatest extent. All of the spider webs whipped at me in an instant. "You really want to do this, huh?" My tone took a bit of a malicious turn, as the smile on my face remained unchanged. _POV narration _ Hisako had been following Ashton for a while now. He had seen him and Killua communicate. At first, he assumed Ashton was a new member of the troupe. But he had his doubts. Killua had been acting strangely around the odd scientist. He also doubted a candidate for the position of chairman within the Hunter Association would associate himself with a group of thieves. Especially since this man seemed to be quite influential during the election. But Hisako still decided to make the man one of his targets, if only due to his association with the troupe. After all, if a powerful person supported the troupe, things would get more difficult for him and his new associate. He prepared extensively for this fight, as he knew every election candidate was strong. He observed the scientist for a few days before attacking, learning of his route and looking for common patterns. He quickly found them, as the scientist also tried to attract attackers, although subtly making it look like he was just taking a planned-out routinely walk. Hisako knew this fight wasn't going to be so simple when the former election candidate slightly tilted his head to avoid his first throw. A more experienced fighter with lesser strength would have rolled to the side entirely. That head tilt could only mean that Ashton was completely aware of where the hit was supposed to land. Hisako still didn't back down. He had always been looking for good fights. And although his experience fighting against Killua made him a lot more cautious, he always liked making fights difficult for himself, and almost losing his life to Killua made him mad. The only reason he was still alive was because of his post-mortem bungee gum manually pumping his blood. He had stopped taking pleasure in great fights, now he only enjoyed the hunt and the kill. Too bad he chose the wrong opponent. _POV Ashton_. Before the webs approached me, I released my N, creating a solid force field of Nen around my body. His webs seemed to stick to my Nen, and I have no doubt they will keep multiplying if I just stand around. I theatrically raised my arms, the barrier around me started expanding violently. There was some resistance at first, but, in the end, his strange Nen was stretched out and pushed away from my vicinity. But he wasn't done. He clenched his fists and pulled all of the strands at once, rapidly making them whip in my general direction. The attack made me jump backwards, but it seems he was also anticipating that, as dozens of cards flew towards my back like arrows. I used a small explosion to blow them off their trajectory. The explosion should have been enough to block them completely, but they were pulled backwards all at once. "You are starting to get on my nerves," I said, as the clown silently watched me, waiting for my next move and an opportunity. "I wasn't expecting you to be so difficult." He seemed to be a bit frustrated. "Well, I guess I should spice things up a bit," I said with the most joyful smile I could manage. "But my intentions are anything but friendly." My eyes turned scarlet underneath my contact lenses. You see, I wasn't exactly idle whilst training Pito. And her Hatsu gave me quite a few ideas of my own. Puppeteering had never been my thing, but I was bored. I didn't think I'd use it so soon, especially in a fight. But it all fits together too well to not use it. _POV narration _ Hisako looked on as his opponent started humming. He quickly covered his ears with Nen, thinking it was a sound attack of sorts. He had no way of knowing it was merely a summoning ritual. Ashton may have created this out of boredom, but it was not a simple Hatsu. Nothing truly simple could come out of that old scientist's mind. He was very meticulous with every single one of his creations after all. A purple light shone behind the scientist, as Hisoka's eyes widened in realization. But it was already too late to interrupt it. He could only watch as his opponent's humming came to an end, and a cheerful melody began. The light behind Ashton molded itself into a rusted merry-go-round. It spun around slowly. It had horses and riders. Every horse seemed to have a mind of its own as they were all moving up and down at different intervals. On top of the horses were little puppets. They were small and lifeless, simply holding on to the heads of the horses with both arms. Hisoka looked on in horror as his instincts told him to run. He was never scared of death, but this just felt off to him. He tried to turn around, but he was stopped. His opponent had already gotten behind him in that split second of shock. "Where are you going? Don't you want to have fun?" His smile was sickening, even to the bloodthirsty Hisoka. The clown felt as if his gut was sinking into his spine. He was used to being the one in power, the hunter. The thrill of winning against a powerful opponent was something he felt many times. But something kept yelling in his mind, to run, to leave that place. Unfortunately, he had been too late. His escape was blocked by his opponent. He had no delusion of being able to run by him. He could only turn around and stare at the ominous Nen construct that was slowly spinning behind him. The cheerful music of the merry-go-round quickly started being distorted. The horses all turned their heads towards Hisoka. The movement was sudden and robotic, throwing away their previous lifelike appearance. And suddenly, the music sped up. Along with it, so did the horses. They spun around much quicker, their gazes still locked onto the seating clown. Slowly, they opened their mouths. Some started spitting nails at him, some were spitting curved daggers that bent around in the air at odd angles, some were spitting spears. But they all had one thing in common: their speed was hard to follow for the clown. He quickly started moving around, dodging left and right. But he was being overwhelmed by the sheer number of them. They all disappeared after touching the ground. And new ones came instantly. This dance went on for a few minutes. They were filled with constant struggle for Hisoka, whilst Ashton watched with glee as his new Hatsu worked perfectly. He was constantly being grazed by the violent circus act. He was covered in cuts. He was barely standing. As the machine stopped spinning. "Was that to your liking?" asked the deranged scientist with a playful smile. But he wasn't done. One of the horses, the only one that had been unresponsive this whole time, shot a chained hook towards Hisoka's arm. It swiftly sunk into his shoulder. He was far too tired to dodge. He was quickly yanked towards the merry-go-round. "Stop!" was all he could muster. But the chain whipped and threw him at the top of the carnival ride. Right into the spike on top of the machine. His body twitched a bit, as his eyes widened in a last look of absolute horror. His blood slid down and covered the merry-go-round, as soon as it reached the rusted-over sign near the top of it. A string of letters was quickly formed in his blood. Blood-soaked carnival _POV Ashton_. "It's a bit regretful that I had to kill this guy. But he was starting to actually get on my nerves. And he also proved to be the perfect test subject for my new Hatsu. And now for the pièce de résistance." All of his blood started being sucked up by the horse that pulled him in. After all of the ride was cleaned, the puppet on top became lifelike. It grew a mask on its empty-white face. A mask with features resembling that of the clown. His eyes spoke of the agony and anguish he felt during his last moments. But he had a forced, completely unnatural smile. "Can't have the entertainment show emotions, can we now?" "Now, I want a little demonstration," I said with a smile on my face. The puppet jumped from the horse and started prancing around, throwing cards everywhere, then producing that same sticky nen to pull them back towards himself. Yes. This Hatsu is capable of stealing a person's abilities and making a puppet with said abilities. It has limited slots, but I figured this guy should be strong enough to warrant one. The new clown puppet jumped back onto its horse. Then the merry-go-round vanished into thin air, its cheerful carnival music disappearing along with it. My former opponent's body slumped to the ground like a puppet that was cut from his strings. The same anguished look was plastered on his face. This ability was surprisingly easy to create, although it took form due to a variety of different Nen types. Actually, it took from anything other than enhancement. It does have a lot of conditions though, like not being able to attack from too far away, which is why I needed to block the clown's path. Or not being able to directly kill anyone with the spitting weapons move. Actually, the only time it's allowed to take a life is when it impales someone on its top spike. It also needs to absorb quite a bit of the blood inside the victim's body from the moment it was impaled. If the person doesn't have enough blood, ability mimicking won't work. I took his head and stored it into my void space. I do need to prove I killed the traitor after all. Although, little Killua will likely believe me either way. I wonder if he wanted to do the killing himself or not. Oh well, that was never specified in our deal. And I would have still killed him anyway. Testing a new Hatsu is more important to me than doing my student a favor. Still, I guess it's time I go look for him again. I obviously won't do it myself, why else did I create Cell Splitter? Finding him was a matter of minutes, again. He was still wondering about the ship's lowest tier. In different places this time, but still not hard to find. This guy is likely doing this on purpose, wanting me to approach him in public so that more people will see us together. Therefore, he will be able to stick the blame on me. Or at least use me as a distraction to escape. He will likely escape during the refill, the last stop before entering the Dark Continent's waters. At least that's what I imagine him doing. But I still don't have enough insight into him to be able to tell his actual intentions. He shouldn't be planning to harm me though. He likely knows that any accusation thrown against me is basically tantamount to nothing at all. Not only will I ignore it, even if I stole a national treasure, but they'd also likely forgive me anyway. Only the Empire in question might start sending assassins after me. But, well, I think most governments already do that, so what's the point? I once again transferred my consciousness to the one closest to him. I approached him much in the same way I had done before. This time he was able to notice me before I patted him on the back though. Teacher. It's great to see you again. Yeah, spare me the good student facade. You're as much of a scumbag as I am. Of course. Let's go somewhere more private. I told him with a simple smile. This casual interaction seems to be exactly what he was hoping for. Sure. Please follow me. And now he's acting subservient in public, making it look like I'm his boss, or at least an important client. His plans are becoming more and more clear, but it's not like a baby plotter would be able to cook up something that I can't think of. We reached his room. On the way, he also called his other associates, telling them to come to meet up at the usual spot, or something along those lines. We should likely wait for everyone to show up before the big reveal. Killua just nodded. After a few minutes of me making some tea and him silently observing me, the rest of the Phantom Troop walked into the room. They probably all gathered somewhere before heading here together. Greetings, how delightful to see you all still well, I said with a smile, as I took a sip of my tea. But I almost spit it out when I saw two people amongst them. It seems that I cannot escape my curse. No matter what I do, I am bound to run into Zoldks. Curse you, Silva, for having so many children. I mean, I guess should have expected Kalito. But what exactly is the hospital security guard Illumi doing with a group of thieves? Well, I guess Silva doesn't know about you brats heading for the Dark Continent, I said, completely ignoring the presence of everyone else in the room. There's no way in hell the Zoldyck family would want any of their offsprings on my homeland. I know that for a fact. Maho would likely jail anyone with that intention inside their compound, supervising them personally. I could see Illumi cough a bit, as Kalito covered his face with his paper fan. What? Am I embarrassing them in front of their new friends? Too bad. Cough teacher. What exactly did you want to show us? Killua reminded me that the rest of the Phantom Troop still existed. They all looked quite surprised to see me. Some were maybe afraid, like Machia and the Vacuum Lady. But their pitiful attempt at fighting me barely even registered as aggression to me. Oh. Of course. My gaze lingered on the Zoldyck brothers, as they both avoided it like the plague. I guess me being basically a friend of their ancestor came into discussion eventually. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so skittish to meet me again. Especially Illumi. I gently ripped space open and dragged out their traitor's head, by the hair and everything. I sighed as I heard a few gasps. I guess explanations are in order. _POV Ashton_. Well, I was originally planning on just capturing him. But he got annoying fast, so I just killed him. I said with a smile on my face, as I presented the clown's head like it was a trophy. The members all seemed satisfied with my capture, although some looked a bit disappointed. I guess they would have felt better if they were the ones to do it. Like Maki, who looked like I just stole her puppy. But they seemed to get some closure in seeing his agonized expression. I guess they can use their imagination and put him in whatever painful situation they want with this face in mind. That was faster than I expected, muttered Killua. So Hisoka finally croaked, huh? Said the rude blonde that winds up his punches. I guess, said the short black-haired man. Fei, yeah, that's him. It probably feels a bit surreal to them, especially since this guy killed two of their own. And I guess I can see how. The guy was quite deadly. His nen was also quite powerful, which is why I chose to trap it in a puppet. It was interesting to see him sling himself around and dodge attacks with it. But he wasn't fast enough, unfortunately for him. The attacks on the blood-soaked carnival get progressively faster as the ride gains more momentum. So the more he stood in its range, the fewer chances he had of surviving. So, any opinions? I was thinking of mounting it on a pole, but I couldn't find any, I said with a smile, trying my best to break them out of their trance. Well, at least those that were in a trance in the first place. The Zoldyck brothers didn't seem to care all that much. Maybe Illumi's eye twitched a bit, but that's it. Killua just pouted, like I broke his toy or something. When thinking about bloodthirsty assassins, these two sure aren't what you'd expect. Well, Illumi does have his moments, but I've yet to see Killua go for my head. The warehouse incident is long forgotten at this point. The troop members all randomly took a seat somewhere in the room. So, did he put up much fight? Asked the swordsman of the group as he sat down beside me. I guess he's not the fearful sort, I can respect that. It was so-so. He was by no means weak. Just weak compared to me, I guess, I said as I poured him some tea. He seems the type to enjoy some high-quality and exquisite tea. He smiled and thanked me as he also started slowly sipping on it, savoring the taste and smiling to himself. So much for Hisoka, sighed Maki. I'd almost say she looked a bit dejected. Did she get attached to the clown post-betrayal? Too bad I didn't get my hands on him, Fei really showing some bloodthirst. Well, I didn't really want him to escape. I couldn't really use a lot of my moves because we are currently on a ship, I said in a matter-of-fact tone. I also started pouring him some tea. Handing it to him, he just nodded, looking a bit weirded out. And I finally noticed something odd. One of their members was missing. I remember him from the warehouse. He was the tall bulky one with large ears and scars on his face. Maybe it's my imagination. But isn't one of you missing? I asked, my smile tired into a bit of a frown. The atmosphere in the room took a turn for the worst. I guess I should have been a bit less blunt. Oh, who cares? It's just water under the bridge at this point. Franklin. He passed away yesterday. We don't think it was the chain user, said Maki, looking at the ground and rubbing her elbow. Great, another Muppet looking to kill the Phantom Troop. Wait, wasn't that the Kurta clan survivor? Well, if he is, then I don't really want him to die. I owe a lot to the Kurta clan. The least I can do is making sure their family survives somehow. Their demise wasn't only my fault, But it started from me. Killua and his gang decided to take things a few steps further, killing everything that moved in their compound. I just asked for a few pairs of eyes, a gesture that might have cost a few lives, but wouldn't have ultimately killed hundreds. This chain user's appearance is nothing but the past mistakes of the troop catching up to them. I see. The Kurta clan kid is heading for the Dark Continent. The people around me looked at me weirdly. But they seemed to realize that I wasn't really part of their friends group and just left me alone. At least most of them. Killua didn't. Teacher, can you please stop the chain user from attacking us? What? Does he really think our bond is that strong? Well, it isn't. If I remember correctly, this is the third time the troop asked me for help. I was rudely interrupted by my very own student. Please. I will be in great debt to you. Okay, this kid is getting annoying. He's really overestimating my relationship with him. I may help him once, help him twice. But this is a mess that he caused himself. Something he now wants me to clean up. I looked at him coldly. My expression was completely dead. My eyes scanned his own for signs of weakness. They weren't hard to find, not to me. My eyes seemed to turn into whirlpools, a powerful murderous intent seeping from me. Everyone in the room was startled by it, although everyone in the nearby tiers should have felt it. Never interrupt me. That was all I said. No fancy, I will squash you like a bug. Or I'll turn your bones to dust. Sometimes colorful words aren't needed to form a threat. Sorry. He looked down at the ground for a bit. Well, if that is all, I will take my leave now. You can keep the tea. Saying that, I left the room. All of my murderous intent was gone. I cast one last glance towards his Oldic brothers as I opened the door. They weren't all that bothered by my murderous intent. Again, Maha likely told them that I am a family friend of sorts. No one made a sound as I left the room. My way back to my room was filled with silence. Comment. But when I got to my room, I realized, why am I still in this small room? And started heading for the first tier. _POV Ashton_. Ha, I wonder how this will mess up Killua's plans. 1. He wanted me to get rid of this headache for the troop too. But I really don't feel like doing any more work for him. I just need to wait and see when they decide to steal the treasure. Now, I am walking towards the nicer room of the first tiers, since I decided to take one of them for myself. I mean, the room I have is probably nicer than that of most, since provisional hunters forming the expedition team get some nice treatment. But I really feel like sleeping in a bed with a gold frame, and I don't feel like dragging out my own from my void space. I randomly chose a room, not really trying to find anyone specifically. Inside was a woman being strangled by what seemed to be a bodyguard. She is wearing a long-sleeved dress with a black shirt underneath. Her hair is worn in an elaborate ponytail, her eyes are black. Overall, she looked to be quite the cute young lady. The problem in this image is the brute strangling her to death. Well, I guess the images have some charm? Maybe it would look better as an art piece though. Oh? What have I walked into? I said, shaking my head. The man reacted quickly, letting go of the poor girl's neck and turning around. But I was a tad bit faster. By the time he was around, I had already gently twisted his neck at a perfect 180-degree angle. I grabbed him by his shirt with 2 fingers and threw him out of the room. Now, I don't really know if I want to keep this room, but I don't want a corpse to stay in it if I can help it. The girl on the bed looked at me, somewhat frightened by her circumstances and somewhat thankful for the fact that I just saved her skin. She was holding her own neck and gasping for air. I patted her on the back a bit, maybe reassuringly. She looks a bit sad, maybe I'll steal another room or something. Well, this counts as a good first meeting in my books. My name is Ashton, a pleasure to meet you, miss. I've had worse first impressions with people. Thank you. Thank you. And she started crying. I guess something like this should have been expected. Surprisingly, she was hugging me whilst crying. Maybe because I am the closest form of comfort she can find? Having someone strangle you to death can be a traumatic experience. I kept patting her back, although I am also getting bored of just staying here. I guess showing some sympathy isn't going to kill me. Even if deep down, I hardly know this person enough to care at all. I mean, I'd probably care more about it if it happened to Maki, and I've wanted to kill her 2 out of the 3 times I met her. The girl kept crying for a few minutes. Then she somewhat regained her composure. "Well, it would be nice if you introduced yourself as well," I said with a bit of a smile. She turned embarrassed for some reason. I thought you already knew who I was." "What? Why would I know that? Is she some type of self-important movie star? If so, I do regret not filming her get strangled." She probably noticed my disdain. She quickly waved her hands around. "And not in that way. My name is Mamas Hiwagworu and I am the 12th princess of the Kakan Empire." "Oh. That explains quite a few things. I guess most of the people on this ship would know the princes of the empire that made it. But I am not most people." "I see. Wait, did I interrupt your assassination by chance?" "Well, I guess I did. I thought I had fixed my thinking out loud problem. I forgot about the whole succession war after Killua told me, mainly because it really didn't interest me at all. I mean, I guess it does now? I did just get involved in it." I guess you did." She looked down a bit, only now noticing that we were still basically hugging. Someone quickly entered the room, and a chain quickly flew towards me. I grabbed the little princess with one arm and stopped the chain with the other. It was pulled, in an attempt to bring me closer to the user, but I didn't even budge. On the other side of the chain, I could see a blond young man looking coldly at me. "Well, I guess this is the chain user. The one hunting down the troop members on board. You know, for a ship this big, you'd think it would take longer for me to meet this guy. But I guess he hangs around the first tier." "That's rude. I was holding a conversation here," I said in a displeased tone. "Let go of the princess, hooligan." "Well, I guess it does look strange. Especially since one of her bodyguards is dead at the door." Me hugging her as she moves her arms around all frantically sure isn't a good image either. Even if those movements are mostly from embarrassment. I slowly let her breathe as I let go of her. She looked at the chain user. "You've got it all wrong. This man saved me." She spoke with actual emotion. Is this a good moment to mention that her voice is quite nice to listen to? Well, as good as any, I guess. "Hey, now it's the chain user's turn to be embarrassed." He looked around the room and bowed an apology. "I'm sorry, sir." "Oh, a polite kid. Now I want to kill him even less." "No harm done. The name's Ashton, by the way. Not like you could do any in the first place." "I'm Kurapika," he said whilst rubbing the back of his head. The princess sighed. I guess this evening is a bit more eventful than she had hoped. I once again patted her back. Comforting people really isn't my strong suit. If this doesn't work, then I usually just give up. But she seemed to appreciate it. She leaned back on me as she closed her eyes a bit, eventually falling asleep whilst leaning on my chest in a seated position. Poor Kurapika seemed to feel like the third wheel in the situation. "I'll go call for some people to investigate the culprit," he said in a low voice as he left the room. I just nodded. "Oh well. I guess I do get to sleep in a nicer room? Although not really alone." _POV narration _ Mamas was not having a nice time with the succession war. She was vehemently against slaughtering her brothers and sisters just for a position of power. And she resented her father for allowing something like that to happen. Nay, he encouraged this event. Mamas has always had a kind heart. She trusted those around her and hoped that they would return her kindness too. Seeing one of her trusted men trying to strangle her to death was like a nightmare for her. A man she entrusted her life and safety to was throwing away any kindness she had ever shown to him and attempting to murder her. For what? A succession war she was forced to attend, and at the behest of one of her more ambitious siblings. It filled her with indignation. She thought her last moments were going to be her contemplating the nature of the world she was born in and regretting not acting differently. But she was saved. A handsome middle-aged man must have heard her silent struggle. She had no way of knowing that Ashton was picking the lock on her room to steal it. In her eyes, Ashton was a knight in shining armor. Although the way he had dispatched her aggressor and disregarded his body was a bit frightening. She chose to see that as the man showing that he wasn't exactly a white knight. He was a jaded veteran. But she also found that attractive, maybe due to her vulnerable state. But Ashton's presence calmed her immensely. She felt like nothing could harm her while she was in his arms. And, technically, she wasn't wrong. If the old monster decided that her life was under his protection, then nothing in the world could have her. Not even the beings of the Dark Continent. He may not be the strongest being alive, but he is by far the deadliest. Animals mostly rely on instincts, and his homeland had been reduced to a zoo of mindless raging beasts. None could harm him in their current, manic state. Even his teacher, the king of the Dark Continent, the being-all of the continent, boast who wouldn't be able to kill the old scientist as long as he had his equipment. Even if he couldn't win a fight, he could retreat easily. The reason why he was a bit worried about his expedition? Most of the animals there knew his scent. They would start hunting him down the second he stepped foot on his homeland. He wouldn't have been safe without his relics. But now? He could walk around it freely. Now, Kurapika's little misunderstanding with Ashton made Mamas quite mad. But she was also happy, as the scientist's instinctual reaction had been to protect her and hug her closer to him. She had no way of knowing he just didn't consider Kurapika a threat. He hadn't done that on instinct because his brain barely registered Kurapika's chain as an attack. After all, his passive Nen defenses could have blocked that completely, much like every attack that the members of the Phantom Troop dished out on his second time meeting them. Overall, that had been both a tragic night and a great one for Mamas. She drifted off to sleep in her savior's embrace. Ashton also considered the night a productive one. He managed to make a new friend Mamas and even met the chain user. And, more importantly, he had managed to upgrade his soldiers' quarters room into the room of one of the 13 princes. Getting involved in the succession war was of little importance to Ashton. He didn't think of any human kingdom as threatening. _POV Ashton_. I only drifted off for around 30 minutes. The little brat I just saved was already clinging on to me like an octopus. She's a tad bit too attached to me. I barely know anything about her. Me comforting her was nothing more than a rare act of kindness on my part. Although, her clingy nature does remind me of Lynn in her younger days. Maybe she's acting childish because she is still feeling vulnerable? I doubt actual relationships, friendship or otherwise, can be formed with only one meeting. But she seems happy snuggling up to me like I am a stuffed toy. I heard a knock on the door. I think Kurapika came back to investigate the situation further. I slowly slipped away from her grasp, waking her up in the process. She gave a long yawn and asked me in a sweet tone, "Is it already morning?" She jumped out of bed with unusual energy and looked into the mirror as she started doing her hair. It's been around 30 to 40 minutes. But good morning, I guess. This girl is really oblivious. It looks like she already forgot the strangling incident from less than an hour ago. Although the marks on her neck proved to be a good reminder. That coupled with the stinging pain. I can't really do much about that though. Well, I guess I can do something. I put my hand around her neck. She looked startled for a second, but she wasn't scared. Silently, a green light glowed from it, as her wounds disappeared completely. Quitliqui's blessing, one of my very few healing relics, and also my favorite. It's a small ring that allowed one's Nen to gain restorative properties. It's simple, but it does have a few quirks to work out. Like the fact that you need to have a clean mind while using it. Or that you are not allowed to feel any hatred when it's in use. Otherwise, it will backfire and give the user the same injuries he's trying to heal or worsens them considerably. The reason why I use this relic now, I need to get used to them again, so I take any opportunity to use one. This was also perfect since I don't particularly hate this little girl. I actually find her situation a bit pitiful. She doesn't seem to be the type that enjoys a good succession war after all. She looked at me with glee as I healed her wounds. Really, she's a lot like a house cat, or maybe a puppy? Regardless, now she reminds me of Pedo. Let's speak to the investigators, I said as I started heading out. She embarrassingly nodded and followed me. _POV Ashton_. The princess and I decided to open the door. I was obviously in front, more of a precaution than anything. I wouldn't want to need to heal her again. Kurapika was waiting around awkwardly. He was together with 3 other people that eyed me suspiciously. I guess they are also this girl's bodyguards. Hey Ashton, sorry again for attacking you. He really needs to get over that. Don't sweat the small stuff, kid. At this point, with all that's been happening in the last few months, him attacking me is just water under the bridge. Okay. He looked a bit confused. I guess people don't usually let you off so quickly after you attack them? Well, I am a bit too tired to worry about all that. So, how's it going? There shouldn't be much to investigate. The guy was strangling her. I spun his head around a bit, and now we're here, I said in a simple tone. The bodyguards looked at his body on the ground. His neck was twisted at an unnatural angle. He had a surprised look on his face, meaning he barely had any time to register what had happened. Overall, he didn't look like he was having much fun. The bodyguards likely suspect me to have also attacked the princess, but they don't really have any evidence. And the princess herself seems to have taken a liking to me, so any accusation of the sort won't stick. We still need to look around the room for a bit. I just shrugged. We all looked at Mama's for a bit. Okay. You guys can enter. The investigation was boring, and it also didn't really go anywhere. They had no way of knowing which of her siblings put the bodyguard up to that. Or if it was a personal decision. If I knew this was so complicated, I would have interrogated him before killing him. So, are you guys done? I'm sure the princess would appreciate getting her beauty sleep. Not that she needs any. My compliment seems to have landed, although it only caused a bit of a blush. Her reactions are quite amusing to watch. And I can dish out compliments like there's no tomorrow, so this will probably be something she has to get used to. I remember doing the same with Lynn. Her reactions were sometimes more violent though. The bodyguards looked a bit concerned, and I guess I know why. A random guy appears and gets the princess of a country to be infatuated with him. Obviously, they wouldn't trust me. Doing so would be failing at their jobs. And yes, I can tell she is in love with me, or at least she believes she is. I just happen to be the closest source of comfort in a rough moment. Her feelings aren't quite developed enough to be called love. And I can barely say that I know her, besides her name and a few personality traits. Why yes. I believe we are done for today, said Mama's as she glanced at me for a bit. The bodyguards left. Kurapika was also about to leave, but I tapped him on the shoulder. Meet me later. I slipped a piece of paper in his pocket as he continued on his way. I guess he knows how to be inconspicuous because he chooses to walk away instead of questioning me like a dullard. After all of the guards left the room and collected the body, only the princess and I were left inside. So, should we go back to sleep? She asked with a bit of a blush. Damn, she's a bit bolder than Lynn used to be. I'm not sure that's appropriate. I would like to make a proposal, however. She seemed to deflate considerably at the first half of my sentence. But the second seemed to give her some hope. She nodded her head, signaling me to continue. If you can secure me a room near yours, I will make sure to protect you. She perked up instantly. Yes, of course. I can arrange that. Yeah, you're not fooling anyone at this point. Pretending not to be excited only works when you don't slip up at the very first word. Wait. Actually, all of the rooms near this one belong to my siblings. Oh. I guess the princes have separate living quarters? I did pass by a few guards, but going invisible is quite easy for me, so I didn't really think much of it. But you can live with me. I mean, a room in the servants' quarters just opened up. Well, her room is basically bigger than your average house, so I guess her servants also live there. Although her actual bedroom should have been a bit better guarded if you ask me. How about I bring my own bed and sleep in your room? I still want to sleep in a good room. She seemed to ponder my suggestion for a bit. We've already dozed off in the same bed, so I guess she's not that embarrassed about it anymore. Okay then. But how are you going to get a spare bed? She stopped when she saw me rip space open and take out a golden king-sized bed. I need to spend all that government funding on something after all. I am also an extremely generous person, always leaving tips to the workers. She blinked a few times as she looked at the bed. I guess that solves that? How does that work? Finally, someone actually caring that I ripped space open right in front of them. Hopefully, she can appreciate the amount of hard work that went into creating this blasted Hatsu. Well, I started explaining how exactly I allowed my aura to take the properties of the space around me and tear itself open, allowing me to store things outside of our known reality. I gave her a simplified version of course, but she seemed to be impressed nonetheless. Wait. I see. Why are her eyes glazed over? Damn it all, why is the only human that can follow my explanations dead? Netero. Well, I guess they were easy for him to follow since he wasn't listening 90% of the time. But still. We should get some sleep, I said with a smile on my face. She seemed to like the idea, going to her bed and laying on it. I could feel her gaze on me a few times, but I decided to ignore it for now. I still have a meeting with Kurapika to attend. _POV Ashton_. I laid there on my beautiful and expensive bed, waiting for Mamas to fall asleep. I was also thinking of how exactly to approach my meeting with Kurapika, the last member of the Kurta clan. I think I should tell him the truth. Especially since I'm not scared of his retribution. I think him knowing the truth this way might be better than Killua getting to use it against me when I've already allied with Kurapika. I mean, Killua will surely do that at any given chance. Even if it's to take away Kurapika's attention from the troop for 1 second. And I already decided that I want Kurapika to live on. If I were to choose between saving him and my former student, then I'd choose him. It would be hard to save him if he actively tries to kill me. So I need to make sure that Kurapika knows the truth directly from me. I will make myself look less guilty if I can give him the whole story. I can also sugarcoat some details, but not majorly, so he doesn't get any doubts when my former student eventually tries to mislead him with another version of events. I don't know if he will be able to ally with me knowing that I also had a hand in his clan's demise. I hope his reaction won't be too violent. Ashton, are you asleep? Well, if I was, I surely wouldn't be right now. Still, she interrupted my thoughts, and that's not very nice. No. Is something wrong? Her voice sounded a bit off. She is either tired or having a nightmare. Either way, I know enough tropes to guess where this is going. I'm too afraid to sleep. Can I sleep with you please? The last part was so low in volume that a mosquito could have done more noise. And yep, just like I expected. This is a classic one after all. Sure, Get and I raised my blanket as she entered it happily. She once again snuggled up to me and hugged me with some strength. Thank you. Her voice was barely a whisper. She fell asleep instantly after hugging me. I guess she's had a busy day. So did I, but mine's not really over yet. And I don't even require much sleep. Now, getting up from here without alerting her might have been an issue, if only I had an ability that allowed me to create another body for myself whilst also leaving this one intact. Oh yeah, I do. I used Cell Splitter and did just that. I transferred my consciousness to the one that wasn't in this girl's clutches and silently left the room. I somewhat expected this outcome, so the meeting place isn't over 10 kilometers away from Mama's room. The location I chose is a random bar. It shouldn't even be open at this time, the ship has a curfew after all. But that won't be enough to stop me. And I doubt Kurapika would miss a chance to find out more about the Phantom Troop. I specified that this meeting is about them on that slip of paper. He just needs to show up. I reached that bar a bit early, but he was already there waiting for me. He was looking around suspiciously, probably hoping I'd show up sooner. He looked relieved when he first saw me. But there was still some uncertainty. I guess he's aware that this could just be a trap the True played out for him. But Killua isn't smart enough to think that out. And getting me to cooperate is easier said than done. I waved at him with a small smile on my face. It seemed to calm him down as he also started approaching me. "Great to see you came. I was afraid you couldn't understand my writing." I greeted without any change in expression. I did write that in a few seconds while Mama's was doing her hair. I didn't bother making it look presentable. It was okay. "Should we go inside? He wants to get to the point, huh?" "Sure, let me just get that for you." I walked towards the door and opened it using 2 strings of Nen. We both sat down inside the empty bar. He looked eager to learn whatever I had on Killua and his group. "What do you know about the troupe?" He looked at me intently. "Well, I don't know that much about them. But I am somewhat related to their leader," I said in a sad tone. Kurapika looked a bit surprised. He raised his eyebrow as some hostility started showing in his blue eyes. "You see, I was his Nen teacher. That was many years ago before he decided to become scum." His aggression lessened greatly when hearing my explanation. "I wanted to apologize to you, member of the Kurta clan, as have had a hand in ruining your home. A sin I have yet to forgive myself for." His eyes widened in confusion. I mean, you only taught him how to use Nen. It's not your fault." He looked down. His genuine personality is quite a nice thing to behold. I feel bad at having to manipulate him. Well, I will get over it. "No. I was a client of theirs. I bought your clan's eyes from them. I was looking to try something at the tea I didn't even get to finish," as his fist smashed the bar in front of us to splinters. He looked at me in rage, as his eyes shined a dangerous scarlet color. I slowly reached for my eyes, and slowly took off my contacts. My eyes shined the same as his, matching them in intensity. The look of surprise on his face told me everything I needed to hear. The eyes, even after a successful transplant, would never change color. That's why I needed to genetically modify myself. And, since he has no way of knowing that, he will think that I am a relative of his. This is exactly where all of this has been leading up to. I could see a tear slide down his cheek. He seemed to be shaken completely. "I guess I can also start actually taking care of this kid. It wouldn't be that great of a hassle." _POV narration _ For a long time, Kurapika had thought himself to be the last of his clan, burdened with the task of taking vengeance for all of his family and friends. He had been alone and wary for the last half of his life. He spent his time training in order to hunt down the troupe. Now, to find out he is not actually alone, the information broke his strong facade. He started crying like a child. He no longer needed to shoulder these burdens alone. He somewhat knew who this man was. He had learned about him from Cheadle after he became a new member of the Zodiacs. There was no clear record of Ashton's birth. He was a bit of an enigma to everyone that knew his first name. His family name was barely mentioned in any documentation, and it was definitely a fake one too. No one with even a shred of intellect would believe that to be his last name. Lennington was a bit too weird of a name for them to consider real. And it was. Netero just thought it would be funny to name his friend like that. Kurapika could tell that this person had his own problems. He was even hiding his heritage. But just the knowledge that he was no longer alone was enough for the teenager to break down. He almost forgot the fact that this man said he also bought some of the eyes himself. Almost. But he was sure there was some explanation to it. He didn't want to think badly of his last living relative. So he was willing to listen with an open mind. This is exactly what Ashton had in mind with his confession. After all, there was no one alive that could testify against him. Not one person in the world knew his actual origin, just like they didn't know that he could genetically modify himself. He had kept the whole ordeal as a secret simply because he didn't like prying eyes. Now his secrecy was being rewarded with a successful plan. Although Ashton's next sentences could make or break their alliance, the troupe knew he would do some experiments with the eyes. So he needed to mention that too. At least, he now knew that Kurapika wouldn't react violently. Not against someone he considers his own blood. Which meant that at least half of Ashton's plan was already accomplished. He didn't need to worry about being attacked by Kurapika at all. After all, it is much harder to save the life of someone trying to kill you. _POV Ashton_. Hey now. There's no need to cry. There might be more out there too, I said with a reassuring smile. He used the sleeve of his suit to wipe his tears. He looked at me. Where were you? I am a much older member of the Kurta clan. I am even older than the old chairman. I have been exploring the world for a long time. I will take the old grandpa approach. I will act my age and mention my seniority. His eyes widened in disbelief. I guess it's hard to act old when you don't really look it. You are still young. Seeing you so consumed by revenge, it sends shivers down these old bones of mine. Regardless of looks, I can easily sell the whole concerned grandpa act. He looked down once again, thinking about some things. I already knew you were old. I was informed of your identity as a new member of the Zodiacs. But I wasn't expecting this. I guess he must have been told of my age and relationship with the previous chairman. That makes things easier. He seemed to be flabbergasted. After the tears were dried up, confusion set in. Thought like, why didn't he help us? And why did he want the eyes of his own people? Are likely brewing up in this young man's mind. And they will be answered. Why he started a question, and I started responding as soon as the first word came out of his mouth. I had detached myself from our clan. Something I regret today. I wanted to explore the world without any worry. I left everyone behind back then. And this is where we are now, I said as I gritted my teeth. His eyes widened once more, this time in grief. I guess I did a good job selling the wayward soul performance too. Now for La Pièce de Resistance. That is one of the things I regret the most in my life. Distancing myself from the people I loved, a cowardly endeavor that only brought me more misery in the end, I said as a tear slid down my cheek. Hey now. I wasn't trying to make this so real. Why does my fake act strike this close to home? I shook my head, quickly dispelling any reflective thoughts I might have had. I can't let this affect me now. I am in the final stages of gaining this child's trust. He looked at me, his expression was a tragic one. He closed his eyes painfully and seemed to shut down for a second. I left him to think for a bit. Meanwhile, I will start formulating my next point. Why I needed to use our clan's eyes. I can't just bluntly say that I wanted to experiment putting it on animals. No, that would defeat the purpose of my last quilty act. I need to make this one more subtle. I can mention something we both have in common. The special ability of the Scarlet Eyes will be what carries this forwards. _POV Ashton_. After Kurapika was done pondering the information I just spoon-fed him, he looked at me again, this time in resolution. Why? Why did you want eyes from our clan? Yep, this was the obvious next question. I was testing out a hypothesis. You see, our eyes have a certain ability. He was surprised once more, a better reaction than what I was expecting. Why, you can also use Emperor Time. So that's how he named it. Well, it's certainly a fitting name. After all, activating the Scarlet Eyes grants one 100% proficiency in all or techniques. All for the small price of draining an unnoticeable amount of vitality every minute. Well, it's unnoticeable to me. A normal human wouldn't exactly find it convenient. Emperor Time, fitting name. That, my child, is the inherent ability that our Scarlet Eyes have. His eyes showed a look of realization. Unfortunately, not many of our clansmen practiced Nen. I needed the eyes to make sure that no one else would be able to gain that ability. But, The eyes of the Kurta clan don't shine when transplanted, he said, a bit confused. And who do you think made that knowledge public? I did my best to dissuade greedy pigs from purchasing our clansman's eyes. Now, it's my turn to crack something. I tapped my foot in the ground, turning the marble floor into fine dust underneath me and forming web-like cracks throughout the entire bar. What I said just now isn't even a lie. I did make that knowledge public after learning of the clan's massacre. I didn't want the Phantom Troop to make all that much profit off my request after all. Although the eyes still sold like hotcakes, turns out people like to keep on things in their collections. Most weren't even used for anything. Just preserved on shelves and left there to look pretty. Which is, in my opinion, a disgusting waste of an extremely powerful eye and a quite decent research subject. The scientists of the world weren't interested/paid enough to start researching ways of implanting the scarlet eyes properly. And since most of them know diddly squat about Nen, they have no incentive to do anything of the sort. There also aren't any hunters besides me that noticed the subtle change in their aura while the Kurta clan still existed. I only noticed it by chance too. If I hadn't, maybe the Kurta clan would have lived. But that's unlikely, especially considering how quickly their eyes sold out. It didn't work. Rather, it didn't help at all. Those disgusting pigs bought our clan's eyes just so they could put them on shelves. Saying what I think is the best way to go here. I see. I won't blame you. Thank you for telling me the truth. He shut his eyes in contemplation. Hey. The two of us could hunt down the troop. I already know the location of some of them. But 2 people out of them are non-targets, I said resolutely. I will always have a soft spot for these Zoldyck brats. No matter how much they try to kill me, I've seen fragments of Zig in all of the. Although that might be exactly because they tried to kill me. But, keep something in mind. Whether it was by the troop, or someone else, it would have still happened at some point. He didn't seem to believe me, he even seemed mad at this statement of mine. What do you mean? They were the ones to kill our clan. If they didn't do it. I could see him not believing his own words more and more as he spoke. He gave up on his sentence and looked down once again. I'm sure you've realized this by now, there was a lot of need on the black market for them. One doesn't just slaughter an entire clan without somewhere to sell their valuables to. I won't explicitly mention that I was the first buyer for the eyes. Doing so would ruin his impression of me by quite a bit. But I will hint at it a bit. Things like informing the world about the eyes, and attempting to take attention away from them. He just looked at the ground and gritted his teeth. I guess he would love to be able to pin all of his sufferings onto only one group. But that's simply foolish. I should know, that's exactly what I've been doing for a large part of my life. Blaming humanity for all the bad things that never happened to me and ignoring the actual issues. He still has a chance to see the bigger picture, before it's too late. I took a long damn time to understand that not all of my problems stem from one group. And I didn't have any help whilst doing my rationalizations. My fear drove me to push everyone away from me. Only Netero stubbornly remained by my side through everything, doing his best to make sure I wasn't going crazy by myself. Every time I tried to move my location he would pull every resource he had available to find me, only to strike up the most casual of conversations like fancy meeting you here in this bunker underneath a random mountain. He was a strange man, but he was dedicated. He also proved to be a much better friend than I deserve. I will do my best to right my wrongs. I'll start by helping this child in front of me. The broken-down bar was silent for a while, both of us pondering on our own issues. We've not let vengeance eat away at us for a long time. Mine a bit longer than his. I was the first one to recover. I have had enough time to reflect on my mistakes. But I also need to sleep. Rest is crucial after all. I may have ways to disregard the need for sleep, but feeling well rested is something that I find joy in. Kurapika. Regardless of all that, we will still hunt down the troop together. Even if our clan would have ended anyway, they were the ones that ultimately did it. And they need to pay. My words woke him up. He nodded, but I couldn't see the same intensity and hatred radiating from him. It seems he's no longer drowning himself in vengeance. At least not now. But it's a start. Revenge is only good in small doses. Too much will make one go crazy. Let us head to our respective rooms and get some rest. I stood up, ignoring the sorry state we left the bar in. We both left silently, neither wanting to pay for the damages. A simple goodbye was all that was needed. We established another meeting in a few days' time. I don't want to kill off the troop just yet. _POV Ashton_. I didn't walk back to my room. I simply transferred my consciousness back to being in bed with the princess and dispelled my clone. Falling asleep as soon as I blinked for the first time. I would say that I slept well. But that would be a lie. I spent most of the night with my eyes closed, thinking of other ways to pass the time in this long trip to my homeland. Mamas, unlike me, slept like a log. She didn't seem to be capable of waking up. Before I even realized it, morning came. She seemed a bit too peaceful, so I didn't want to ruin her sleep. However, her servants had a different idea. I heard a loud knocking on the door. Princess. Your first brother, Benj, has called for a meeting with some of the other princes. You have also been invited. Great, just what I wanted. Why would they decide to meet up like this? They are supposed to be enemies now. I can't help but think this is some sort of trap. And that thought makes me want to tag along for the ride. I may not be interested in getting involved with their empire's affairs. But I already went through the trouble of saving her once. And we do have an agreement. I get a nice room even if I have to share it, and she gets a bodyguard to me. So I will make sure she remains safe. Mamas didn't even react, she was still sleeping. I decided to wake her up myself, especially since I doubt this will be something she should miss. I shook her a bit, she woke up after a bit. She stretched a bit, it seems she won't get flustered over clinging to me anymore. Next time we sleep together, remind me not to use a blanket, you had me covered quite well in that department. But teasing her seems to do the trick. As she instantly turned red and looked away. I heard another series of knocks on the door. Shut up, I shouted. Mamas looked at me with an amused smirk. Don't be that rude to them. They are my allies. Yeah, allies that couldn't save you as you were being killed a few steps away from their room. Yeah. They just wanted to inform you that you've been invited to a meeting by your first brother. She looked a bit shocked. I guess being invited to a meeting right after a failed assassination attempt is a bit odd. There's no way her siblings don't know about the assassination. I don't trust Mamas's bodyguards to keep their mouths shut. And I definitely don't trust the people that came and cleaned up the traitor's body. One of them specifically seemed surprised when seeing the body. Did he expect to be cleaning someone else's blood? I obviously didn't call them out, but I observed the situation closely. I think it's quite obvious that this assassination was orchestrated by one of the other princes. I think the obvious choice would be the one inviting us to a meeting now. Benjamin Hawaii-Woru, the first prince of the Kakan Empire. I don't actually know anything about him. I just know his father, the king, a bit. A cold man with a cruel self-absorbed personality. The current ruler of the Kakan Empire always liked to consider himself powerful. It's probably why this succession war even exists. He likely wants the new ruler to be as powerful as him. He's one of those that tried to assert their power over me in the past. I've had my fun making him look like a fool for a bit. But the novelty of a raging fat man being humiliated disappeared quite quickly. I'm sure he still sends assassins for my head from time to time. Well, none have been coming lately, maybe because he's been cooking up this entire expedition/succession war. Why would he want me to meet with him? She was confused. I don't really know why though. He's always been an aggressive person. If he was to ally with someone, it wouldn't be with me. Great, this basically confirms that this meeting is sketchy. If that wasn't already obvious enough. Don't worry. I will make sure you are safe. She perked up at this. Her smile seemed to shine a bit too brightly for me. Of course. Thank you. Well, there she goes. a princess of a powerful empire bowing her head to me with a smile on her face. That's not really something that happens daily. Looking down, I realized that I ended up sleeping with my suit on, which ended up wrinkling it to no end. I guess I'll have to change too. We should get changed. I'll give you some privacy, I said as I left the room. She seemed a bit disappointed, but I'm not one to take advantage of this type of setting. She is likely feeling indebted to me, and also developed feelings at a vulnerable moment. I don't plan on taking them seriously for now. After the dust settles down, she will likely realize that she doesn't actually love me or anything of the sort. Outside of the room, the servants were all there, silently waiting. They all gave me mad looks. I guess I may have come off a bit rude, but they did ruin a perfectly fine morning. Well, I guess it's not really their fault. This Benjamin guy is the one I should be blaming. Whatever, I don't really care about befriending them anyway. For all I care, they might all be assassins going after Mama's life. It is quite strange how quickly I managed to get involved in this whole succession war. But I don't actually plan on participating in any other way than protecting Mama's. And she doesn't really seem to want to become a queen either. Problem is, I doubt she can actually retire from the war. The current king wouldn't have gone through all of this trouble of organizing this deathmatch if the contestants could just give up and leave. Where is the meeting, by the way? I asked, as the men still glared at me. It's in the room of the first prince, said one of them as he looked at me. Do they think they are intimidating me or something? Oh well, I'll just ignore them. I ended up ripping space open and changing my shirt whilst waiting outside of her room. I also grabbed a new coat, as mine was getting a bit dirty. I'm done, she shouted from inside the room. I entered to take a look obviously. She was wearing a purple frilly dress. I think that's her favorite color or something. I guess she does look good in it. You look great. Let us go now. She turned a bit red and just followed me. _POV narration _ Usually, Mamas wouldn't be feeling so carefree heading straight for what any person with a brain would consider a trap. But she was different this time. By her side, was someone she trusted enough to protect her safety and well-being. Both mental and physical. Mamas didn't think of herself as an easy woman in the past. But this situation had shown her that she was quite quick to fall in love. Although blaming her would be a bit cruel, the circumstances painted Ashton in the most perfect of lights. If he was any lesser of a man, he would have likely accepted the girl's misconstrued feelings. Or at least that was what the man thought. But Mamas didn't think of it in a bad way. She knew she loved him because he provided a feeling of safety. He was strong, he was currently an anchor for her. Is it really wrong to love someone that helps you when you are down? Was the thought coursing through her mind. She realized that Ashton didn't openly show much affection to her. However, she didn't know enough about him to realize that this was just how he was in general. A man that is used to bottling up everything and avoiding complicated issues. She thought he was hesitant because of the little time they spent together and the fact that she felt indebted to him. And she was partly right. But there were many issues with this situation that only Ashton could notice. Like, the fact that she seemed to be completely dependent on him right now. Or how she seemed to hang on to every single one of his words. The little teases he occasionally gave were usually taken as compliments. Simple words were enough for her to react strongly. Now, Mamas was trying to figure out a way for this man to show her his true feelings about their situation. Whilst Ashton was trying his best to avoid breaking the girl's heart for no good reason. He was not in a state where he could accept someone's feelings anyway, regardless of circumstances. The mission ahead of him was something that he needed to focus on. And love was something he considered to be the worst of distractions. Although, deep down, he started caring for the little princess that happened in his arms. Just like he started caring for the survivor of the Kurtak lion. Not out of duty, nor out of guilt, just because he felt pity. It would be a pity for this child to die. He tried his best to justify this to himself. But in the end, he was slowly opening up to the people around him. Something that Netero had tried to get him to do for many decades. And, Had the old chairman been alive right now, he would finally be able to enjoy looking at his friend slowly breaking out of his self-made prison, one that had bars made of insecurity and fear. But regardless of all of that, there are many obstacles in front of the people he now wants to protect. He needs to face them accordingly, with the appropriate amount of cruelty and decisiveness. Hesitation is rarely rewarded with anything other than regret, and the old scientist was done regretting. _POV Ashton_. We reached the room of the first prince quite quickly. It was basically on the same corridor, so there wasn't any way to get lost whilst walking in a straight line. Mamas was still following behind me, with a determined look on her face. I guess she's taking this meeting seriously, huh? Well, at least she doesn't seem to be afraid. I was expecting a bit of fear, to be honest. She doesn't really know what I can do, but she knows her brother quite well. From the rumors I've heard, he should be quite decent in strength. Well, nothing on the level of even the weakest Zoldyck, but still, decent. I won't count little Iluka on the list of Zoldks, by the way. Due to the calamity living in her body, she's likely the strongest Zoldyck anyway. Regardless, it seems that Mamas blindly trusts in my skills, even though she has barely seen anything that would be considered astonishing from me. How do I get her to rely on me to a lesser extent? Well, I guess I should address the elephant in the room. A large bear plushie-looking Nen beast. It had blue fur, razor-sharp teeth, large round eyes and mouse ears and tail. The Nen beast has been sticking to her like glue this entire time, even as she was being killed. From all of the glances I've taken at the royalty on this ship, all of the princes that I've seen had a Nen beast on them. I don't really know its context, but they should be related to the succession war in some way. But I dislike how little combat ability she otherwise has. Relying on a Nen beast for protection is quite foolish, regardless of what that beast is capable of. I need to train Mamas to protect herself, at least to a basic level. She doesn't really seem to be a hand-to-hand type, but I am proficient enough in a few weapons. I will start talking her into learning archery after this meeting ends. I should be a good enough teacher for her, so there is no need to find one. When entering the room of the first prince, I could already see a few people gathered there. One tall lady with a blue dress and blonde hair. She also seems to be quite the beauty. For context, I am around 1.90 meters tall. Mamas looks to be around 1.55 at best. This lady is about as tall as I am. Although, she is wearing heels. Inside the room, there was also a beautiful woman holding a baby in her arms. I'd wager that the actual prince/princess was the baby in this case. The woman doesn't seem to be a maid though, so likely the mother. Behind them, was the familiar face of Kurapika, who smiled a bit when seeing me. I returned his smile and continued to scour the room. That was it, only 3 princes were here. Benjamin seems to want to make an entrance or something. He didn't even bother greeting us or anything. What a rude brat. Everyone seemed to have brought a bodyguard. The blonde girl had 2 of them. She hasn't even spared us a glance this entire time. It's a bit annoying that we now have to wait for the people that invited us in the first place. _POV Ashton_. We waited around in silence for a while. Kurapika and I pretended not to know each other, mainly because that would complicate things. It was mostly a silent agreement. If the bodyguards of 2 different princes acted familiar, then the others will start suspecting an alliance forming and would target them. Kurapika would likely be in a bit of trouble if the one he's supposed to protect gets targeted by more people. Although I wouldn't care much if that happened, it doesn't matter whether it's 1 ant biting at my ankles or 10. Mamas didn't seem all that tense about the whole situation. Kurapika also relaxed a lot when seeing me. A familiar face is nice to see, I guess. The woman and child he was protecting still looked tense. I guess all of the princes should recognize me from my little warning during the ship's presentation. The blonde girl just looked at me curiously from time to time. She turned her gaze away every time I tried to make eye contact. Maybe she considers that a condition for my control Hatsu. After all, They can only come to that conclusion since they are quite ignorant when it comes to relics. All of the bodyguards were standing behind their respective prince. But I wasn't really going to wait while standing. I took out a chair from my void and sat down at the table, right beside Mama's. The blonde princess's servants were about to speak up, but their leader raised her hand, signaling them to shut up. Eventually, I got bored and took out my tea-making set. Using a portable stove was also fine. I started making tea for Mamas and me. She seemed happy with the taste. The rest of the room, Kurapika included, looked at me weirdly. But no one spoke up. I decided to tease them a bit though. "Would you people like some fine tea?" I asked in a refined tone. The tense atmosphere was starting to get on my nerves after all. The blonde girl released a sigh. She still didn't look at me, or talk to me, but she extended her hand anyway. She was a bit rude, but being careful isn't all that bad a thing. I gave her a cup with a smile on my face. I could see Mama's pout a bit. But I can't really ignore the awkwardness in the room just like that. Kurapika decided to speak out. "I think some tea would be nice right now." He also came towards me. I poured him 2 cups. And he gave one to the woman and kept one himself. Eventually, the door opened widely. A tall man walked in. He had orange spiky hair raised upwards and to the sides. He was muscular and around 2.1 meters. Quite tall, but then again, Beyond was even taller. I think Beyond took that from his father, who used to be a bit taller than me in his youth. Lin also wasn't all that short. So I guess they mixed quite well. The first prince, Benjamin, looked at us with a smirk on his face. Out of a few other doors came his servants, surrounding us in the process. The first prince took his seat at the head of the table and looked at his siblings and eventually realizing that I was also seated. I don't understand why a servant is also seated. But it is great to say he started speaking, but since he didn't start with an apology I must remind him of the circumstances. I must say, the accommodations of the first prince are quite lackluster. I even had to brew tea for myself and the other guests, I said with a calm smile, interrupting his loud voice with my even tone. The blonde girl smirked a bit as she saw her first brother clenching his fists. Mamas also seemed a bit amused by this. The only one that was uneasy was the woman holding the child. Don't speak out of turn, servant. Mamas. Discipline your people well. I don't want to need to do it for you, he said hauntingly, probably not appreciating the fact that I was sitting down at the same table with him. Kurapika scoffed, being offended for my sake. I didn't know our relationship progressed to this point. But I guess I am his last living relative. Now that I think about it, I technically am really his relative, DNA-wise that is. If I were to have a child, they'd also have the scarlet eyes. So that might not actually be that big of a lie. Mamas just smiled a bit at her brother's foolishness. And it seems this wasn't the reaction Benjamin was expecting, as he raised an eyebrow in confusion. I guess he's used to the shy and warm personality of his younger sister, thinking he could intimidate her easily. But she's a bit too calm for his liking. I called you all today to speak on an important matter. He scanned the room, looking at all of us. Get to the point already, attack us or form an alliance. I want to head back and sleep more. I don't believe we can. He started speaking again. Can you just get to the point? You've already made us wait for you, now you're further wasting our time. Ooh, I like this blonde already. Really mirroring my disdain for this useless facade he's putting on. He's obviously going to attack us all. She just wants to get it over with. Her confidence is most impressive. Settle down, Camilla, he said as veins started popping up on his forehead. So her name's Camilla, huh? Neat. He gathered 3 princes here, 2 of the weaker ones and one that I can assume he sees as a threat. He probably plans to turn Mamas and the woman against Camilla, hoping to eliminate her quickly. Then he probably wants to kill the other 2 whilst they least expect it. This feels a lot like a beginner-level plot. I guess he doesn't have any great advisor by his side. The plan isn't bad, but neither I nor Kurapika would ever fall for something so boorish. I may be giving Kurapika a lot of credit here, but he has made a positive impression on me. I'd find it hard to believe that he would be so simple-minded. He looked at the woman and mamas, ignoring Camilla for now. I want to form an alliance with the two of you. Wow, this guy is blunt. Camilla also raised her eyebrow at the unveiled threat. I believe it's best for us to take down Camilla first, as she is one of the biggest threats on this ship. He looked at mamas and the woman for agreement. But he got a few raised eyebrows. Camilla was obviously glaring daggers at the large idiot. But she didn't say anything, only looked at me with a smirk. Eventually, Kurapika and I looked at each other. I nodded at him, hoping we'd be thinking about the same thing. We both leaned over to our respective prints, whispering something to them. Okay then. We agree to your alliance, they both said at the same time. This is where things get a bit more entertaining. _POV narration _ Camilla smirked, as this was exactly the outcome she had expected. Her brother was a powerful strategist and a good fighter. But he had severely miscalculated this operation. He had overlooked quite a few aspects. He probably considered Kurapika to be the most dangerous person inside that room. But Camilla knew better. She had seen Ashton make a dozen armed guards stop in their tracks with a simple word. The man in a lab coat was the most interesting person in the entire room to her. She was aware that not everyone had seen the ship's presentation. The first prince certainly didn't, because, if he did, he wouldn't be so calm right now. Now, the blonde princess also learned that this man had some sort of relation with the youngest Zodiac present on the ship. However, even if they were all to team up on her, she still wasn't worried at all. Rather, it was better if they all killed her together. Her Hatsu, strengthened by post-mortem Nen, would only be more powerful. Her Hatsu would sap on the life force of her attackers and revive her. As for her servants, they weren't really people she was worried about. They knew what they were getting into in following her. Very well then, said Benjamin with a large smile, although he still seemed a bit uneasy. Camilla eyed her brother with hate. Do you really think you can get rid of me so easily? She said, acting aggrieved. Silence. You are ruining this festive mood. An alliance between family members is something you shouldn't do, he said, disregarding the fact that Camilla was also his sister. His smile became larger as he seemed encouraged by his sister's faked panicked state. Camilla looked around the room frantically, giving the man even more confidence in his actions. Now then, he started, staring at Ashton and Kurapika, the servants that were now in an alliance with him. Would you two kindly take care of this pest? Prove your masters useful to this alliance? He asked with a sickeningly large smile on his face. Camilla was extremely calm now, at least on the inside. Her brother was likely hoping the two would tire themselves out fighting her and her servants. However, their actions surprised both of the princes. Kurapika and Ashton looked at each other for a bit. Eventually, Ashton burst out laughing, signifying the complete disdain he felt towards Benjamin's orders. Kurapika also let off a small chuckle, further irritating the large man. What is the meaning of this? He asked aggrieved. Camilla was also a bit confused. She had expected the two to play along at least for a bit. They were surrounded by Nen users trained by the first prince after all. But the two didn't even seem to consider the situation threatening in any way. The blonde princess also gave up on her act. An amused smirk appeared on her face, which made Benjamin quite mad. After all, he considered himself to be quite powerful, and his servants weren't exactly weak either. How was he to know that he was dealing with two monsters, one bigger than the other? _POV Ashton_. Hearing this brat's mad tone makes this even funnier. I wanted to hold the facade for longer, but I just can't. Mamas seems a bit confused but doesn't seem worried at all. Unlike the lady with the child. She seems to be sweating bullets at this point. Camilla was on the verge of breaking out in her own laughter as her brother seemed to be letting off enough steam to rival an old train. This discourse he was starting to shout again. But I interrupted him a bit, as I stopped my laughter. Shut up, I said. I slowly got up. All of the servants around me tensed up, their nen flaring up, preparing for a fight. I see. So that bitch already bought the two of you, huh? He said whilst looking at Mamas and his aunt. Well then. We'll have it your way. Servants. Kill them all. An all-out brawl wouldn't be quite nice for little Mamas to witness. So I will take care of their numbers myself. At least some of them. Going all out would be quite hard in this situation. And I'd make quite a mess if I used parasitic explosion here. So I will be using the Zoldyck family techniques. Kurapika extended his chain and crushed the neck of one of them already, blocking a few of the servants in the process. There was 14 of them in total. Well, 13 now. They all had different weapons, charging at us at their own paces. Camilla was still sitting in her seat, looking at her servants struggle against two of Benjamin's. I suddenly felt like dancing around a bit, so I decided to join the fight myself. Kurapika was dealing with Benjamin and 3 others, Camilla's servants were occupying 2 of them. So that only leaves another 8 for me to dance with. Which is a bit disappointing. I wanted a few more of them, although they don't even count as a warm-up. One of them, a larger man, tried to crush me with a hammer. I simply sidestepped it, leaving behind an afterimage and just walking by his side. He fell to the ground as his heart was plucked out by my claws. It was so fast that I didn't even have the chance to stain myself. Nor did he have the chance to react to it. The other 7 didn't seem too discouraged. One of them shot towards me, Nen-infused bullets speeding in my general direction. All I did was dodge them all with minimal movements, not letting even a strand of my hair get touched. A man quickly approached me with a spear, thrusting it towards my chest as 2 others tried to slash at me from the sides. I used the snake awakeness, whipping my hand around like at breakneck speeds, shattering their weapons with my blurry defenses. I am not actually using any nen, so they looked quite surprised to see their weapons destroyed. They were all using shu, covering their weapons in aura and allowing them to become extensions of their own bodies. The 3 didn't have any time to retreat though, as I thrust my leg into the chest of the one in front of me and took out the hearts of the sword wielders. I also took a step back quickly, not wanting to ruin my beautiful white coat, which remained unstained throughout the whole fight. Now, there were only 4 of them left. They were starting to get scared, but their loyalty to the prince seems to be quite strong, as all of them still stood against me. The ranged fighter continued firing towards me. In this situation, it would have been smarter to fire towards Mamas or the woman with the child. But he is likely panicking right now. I took out a small knife from my sleeve as I dodged all of his bullets without much issue. I threw it towards his head, and it would have hit had it not been intercepted by a man with a shield. Well, the knife cut straight through the Nen-enhanced shield, and into the man holding the shield, stopping into his lung as the man collapsed in pain. Had I enhanced that small throwing knife with Nen, I would have killed both of them easily. But where would be the fun in that? 2 more spearmen tried their luck at fighting me in close quarters, this time supported by the gunner's restrictive shots. I let their spears pass by me, twisting my body in unnatural ways at a decent speed. One passed by in front of me, and one was at my back. They both looked surprised and terrified. I grabbed one spear with my elbow as I dragged the man in front of a hail of bullets. I kicked the spear in front of me with my knee, sending it upwards. After that, I drove the other spear into his chest using my elbow. As its previous user collapsed behind me, riddled with holes. The impaled man looked at me with fear, as I grabbed his spear, twirled around and threw it towards the gunner. The spear went right through his head and impaled itself into the wall behind him. I sighed a bit and looked at the bodies surrounding me with a satisfied smile. _POV Ashton_. My fight with the 8 men proved to be quite an enjoyable pastime. Too bad it was relatively short. That can't be helped though, the Zoldyck fighting style is something that ends fights rather swiftly. The fight itself lasted around 20 seconds. In that time Kurapika also took down the servants fighting him, leaving only Benjamin, who was likely stronger than his servants. Camilla's servants also managed to kill one of their opponents, 2 of their own died in the process. Now it was a 1 versus 1 and Camilla's servant was losing ground quickly. I don't care about their lives, but the circumstances make us allies, so I guess I can help a bit. I just kicked a chair in that man's direction, it smashed into his back and took away his balance as he started stumbling forward towards his enemy. Camilla's servant took the chance and stabbed the man's heart with his machete. He looked at me thankfully, but I decided to ignore him, instead giving more attention to my newly found relative. Kurapika was moving around the prince skillfully, doing the large man easily by using his rather low stature and superior speed. I clapped my hands, Kurapika looked at me a bit, and the first prince was also surprised to see all of his henchmen dead on the ground. "Prince, would you grant me this dance?" I asked mockingly. My request managed to get a laugh out of Camilla. Mamas and their aunt were too busy processing the number of corpses littering the living room. I guess things went down quite fast for the 2 of them. "Disrespectful fool. I will show you the might of the strongest prince of the Kakan Empire," Benjamin said with anger and resolution. "Spare me the bravado, kid, I'm likely older than your grand empire. I mean, the Kakan Empire is a relatively new country, so that's not a surprise." Kurapika shrugged and walked back to the table, not even putting the first prince in his eyes. And, he is right not to do so, he's killed powerful Nen users in the past Phantom Troop. Benjamin can't be considered strong, he is likely comparable to members of the troop, who are decent, but not absurdly powerful. Killua might be the only exception, as he is quite strong. His ability to steal Hatsus is also decent. I'm sure he's tinkered with it since I've last seen it. But Benjamin can't hold a candle to my old disciple. Comparing the 2 is unfair, there is quite a difference in talent to be had. I slowly walked towards him, using rhythm echo walking in a pattern that allowed me to leave an afterimage behind me with every step. He looked at me seriously, then smirked. "Ha, not even an user? How did someone like you take down my men?" His bravado is getting quite annoying, but he is in for a rude awakening. Using Nen against an opponent of his level would be appropriate, but I don't feel like giving him the honor. So I will show him how useless his meager Nen abilities are by defeating him only using my body. He enhanced his fist as he tried to punch my side. I stepped backwards, he failed to stop his punch in time, getting confused by my afterimage and losing his balance. I chose to punish him for his mistake, my leg whipping around and kicking his face into the ground. He growled as he slid backwards, avoiding an axe kick to the back of his head. He jumped up, attempting an uppercut, an extremely predictable move. He only managed to hit the air as I took a step out of his range. What took me by surprise and almost hit me was a strange Nen palm extending from his fist. I twisted my body and avoided it at the last second, but it left me a bit open. The prince took another swing at me, this time he managed to land a hit. But it was a lot less impactful, as I jumped backwards just as he was hitting me, making his fist only slightly wrinkle my suit. As I was sliding backwards my arm whipped around and cut him in a few different spots, ruining his sleeve and cutting into his hand muscles. He looked beyond annoyed. I guess he's a decent enough fighter to notice that he didn't deal any damage. But Mama's wasn't, as a distinctive shriek could be heard from her side of the room. Benjamin looked seriously at me, waiting for me to make a move. I guess he wants to be the one on the defensive this time? Fine by me. But he will regret that choice. I dashed towards him, my speed without using any Nen is only a bit slower than him. He had ample time to react. But he didn't expect me to come to a stop right outside his range and to start circling him, leaving after images with every forward movement. Benjamin looked around in a panic, trying his best to discern where I truly am. Eventually, he regained his bearings and calmed down. I took a step into his range, breaking his concentration as I kept using rhythm echo and kept creating after images. He turned around, expecting me to strike from his back. He swung his arms around in an attempt to keep me at bay. But it didn't work quite well. All of the afterimages disappeared as I stabbed my claws into his side, He reacted quickly. Instinctively he used his nen to protect himself, stopping my attack from reaching his heart. But it still damaged his lung quite badly, as his ribcage also cracked and further worsened his injury. I took a step back as he once again tried to punch me. Another palm of nen hit the ground in my previous location. The prince gritted his teeth and clutched his side. Hate was evident in his eyes as he gazed upon me. "It was an enjoyable experience, my prince," I said, taking a bow as he looked at me, acting all confused. "Huh? We've barely just begun, you disgraceful peasant," he shouted with indignation. All of his composure was gone as he felt the pain in his lung. "Well, my patience is about done," I said as murderous intent radiated off of me, startling the tall man, causing him to take a step back. I simply took out a little throwing knife, looked at it for a second. I used nen to look at the trajectory and made sure that no one else would be hit. I used shu, covering it in nen, and threw it at him at speeds he couldn't even react to. The knife pierced through him, went through the wall behind him and continued. It eventually stopped after going through a few more steel walls. Benjamin looked down at his chest. The place where his heart should have been was now replaced by a small knife-sized hole. He looked at me in shock as he stumbled forwards, falling to the ground with a loud thud. "Well, that takes care of that. _POV Camilla_. I wasn't expecting that. Even if my brother is a boorish man, he is still a powerful nen user." He was being toyed around with like he was a small child play fighting with an adult. Benjamin's intimidating size and the strength he was proud of seemed pathetically useless. To think my brother would be reduced to such a state. That man, Ashton, is a lot stronger than I had anticipated. I was expecting myself to die at least once in that fight. But no one came even close to the table of then princes. In retrospect, the smart move for Benjamin's bodyguards would have been to attack us first. Although, after seeing that knife throw, I highly doubt that change in strategy would have done anything to change this outcome. Then there was his murderous intent. It was breathtaking. It didn't frighten me, but it sent a different type of shiver down my spine. This is splendid. I almost can't help the excited smile threatening to reach my lips. I must make this man bow to me. His strength will be a great asset to my ultimate goal of destroying this sick society. He is perfect. Everything about him. I need to make him devoted to me. However, one obstacle still stands in the way of that. Mama's. My little sister, who seems to have taken a liking to this man. Her sweet nature might be attractive to most men, but, from what I've seen, Ashton seemed unaffected by her feelings. Even if he seemed to somewhat dote on her. Even when passing tea, she was the first to receive it, signifying that her strategy was at least somewhat successful. I can't act like that, but I have my charms too. My looks have made me quite desired across the Kakan Empire. I am sure I will lure him in somehow. But how do I make him lose his loyalty to Mama's? Killing her won't do. He'll likely find out who did it eventually. And he won't be pleased with me. I need his loyalty more than anything now. With him by my side, there will be nothing to stop me from winning this succession war. _POV narration _ Camilla was lost in her thoughts as her first brother fell to the ground. Mama's was shocked at how things had ended. She was expecting her brother to put up a fight, but the result almost made the kind-hearted girl pity him. Almost being the most important part. She could only sigh in relief, as she knew what her brother would have done to her if he had won. This succession war had shown her just how dirty the empire she was living in was. She now wanted to flee it somehow, but the Kakan Empire had just become a world superpower. Fleeing from them would have been easier said than done, at least in the girl's mind. If she were to voice her concerns, Ashton would likely laugh out loud once more. After all, there was no kingdom that dared to pursue him openly. It didn't matter if they were part of the V6, the V5 recently changed its name into the V6 because the Kakan Empire became part of the group. There were many factors to take into account when thinking of Ashton's standing in Lake Mobius. His affairs were usually quite complicated. First of all, he was needed. Gaining his ire would rouse the other countries that wanted to get on his good side. Then, there was also something else: fear. It was no secret to everyone that held political power, Ashton was an enigmatic figure. Not only excelling in actual strength, but also in the manipulation of information. That was also why he didn't need to bother changing his appearance or clothing style for this trip. He already said he was doing a mission, and there was another prestigious figure to confirm it. No one would dare to further question the matter. Even if he loudly shouted his name on the stage, no one could do anything against him. Even the king of the Kakan Empire, who despised him, still wouldn't risk getting on his bad side openly. The king was many things after all, but he wasn't an idiot. So, Mama's worries would be amusing to the old scientist. Right now, she should rather be more worried about the strange looks her sister was sending Ashton. The amount of thirst radiating from her didn't go unnoticed by the other two women inside the room. Mama's didn't want to think much of it. But Oido, their aunt, and the mother of the infant princess she was currently holding could tell from her gaze that she desired something in the room. It didn't take long for her to make that connection to the strongest and strangest person in the room, Mama's bodyguard. Who, in her opinion, is both a strangely agreeable person and a cold-blooded murderer that didn't even blink when ripping someone's heart out. All she could say about him was that he made nice tea and fought really well. So there wasn't much for her to go on. But she could guess that there wasn't much else needed for Camilla to feel like she needed him as her servant. Of course, that gaze seemed a bit too intense for that, but ultimately, there wasn't anything to say that she was somehow infatuated with him. That would be quite a ridiculous notion to Oido. She knew Camilla quite well, and she was not the type to fall in love. But she failed to realize that she was the type to become obsessed with her goals. And, technically, she was now obsessed with Ashton, or rather, his strength and usefulness to her cause. After Ashton was done dusting his shoulders, he went back to the table and sat down, not wanting to let the atmosphere get even more strained. "Well, that didn't go quite cordially," he said with a small smile, like he hadn't just ended a few lives a few seconds ago. His casual demeanor sent shivers down Oita's spine, and Camilla's, although the latter was, once again, for different reasons. I don't like the way the royal family is being torn apart by this succession war," shouted Mama's, as tears finally managed to reach her eyes. She had been holding back a bit, but to see her own brother threaten her life openly was not pleasant. Camilla was somewhat startled by her sister's unusual outburst. I propose an alliance between all of the people present in this room." Her resolution was obvious in her tone as she wiped the tears from her eyes. "Things are only going to get more complicated from here," was the only thing Ashton could think of right now. _POV Ashton_. I wasn't expecting Mama's of all people to take a stand here. But I guess she's acting as a prince should. I wasn't the only person who found this surprising. The only person that didn't think much of it was Kurapika, and that's because he doesn't know her all that well. Even Camille, who's been acting oddly after seeing me kill her brother, seemed somewhat surprised. I guess I should see where exactly this is going. Not getting involved in the actual succession war remains a wish of mine. The only reason the first prince died was due to him attacking me, and Mama's and Kurapika. Otherwise, I won't go seeking them out and killing them. That would likely end the war early. It would take me less than a minute to go through every room and kill the princes. An alliance? Dear sister. I'm sure you realize what happens even if we become allies. Camille sure is sticking close to the facts. After all, this succession war would only end when all but one prince is dead. An alliance would simply not last long. And Camilla also seemed to be the ambitious sort. She's likely the only one in this room that wants to sit on that throne. Mama's doesn't have the ambition to if so, and the other princess is just an infant. Although, if I am to be truthful, most of them have high chances of dying upon reaching the Dark Continent. Still, Mama's is intelligent enough to understand the implications of her sister's words. She looked quite troubled too. But I can reassure her a bit. Yes. Maybe an alliance would be quite possible after all. But they won't be allying against the rest of their siblings. If they want the war to end early, there is only one thing they can do. Kill the king, I said as I took a sip of my remaining tea, which was only lukewarm by now. Everyone in the room looked at me with wide eyes. The shock was evident in all of them. It's quite clear that they weren't expecting that. Not everyone has the gall to threaten the life of the king of one of the most powerful nations in front of his children. But it's quite normal for me. There have been many kings before this one and there will be many after him. He's nothing but a small footnote in history. Ending one succession war early doesn't mean anything either. It just prevents further loss of life and resources. I could just enter the king's room and teach him a few tricks about dying, but I want to see how the people in this room will face this hurdle. "Why you're proposing that we kill King Nasabai to end the war early?" asked the woman holding the child. Kurapika also seemed shocked at my suggestion, but he just looked at me and smiled. I guess he trusts me enough? He's strong, so he likely can escape if things go bad anyway. I'm not proposing it. It's the only choice you have. You guys don't have any political power to go against him. Your only choice is to kill him. If you want a lasting alliance, that is, I said, looking at Camilla, who seems to be shaking. Does she care so much about her father? Why is her breathing getting heavier by the second? And I'll stop looking at her because I'm not ignorant enough to not know the answers to the questions I've been asking. 2. Why would she get that excited over the idea of killing her father? I mean, the king isn't a likable person, but he shouldn't be despised to that extent. But she seemed to calm down quickly, regaining her composure and asking me a question that I wanted to hear. And what exactly would we do after that? Someone still needs to become the ruler. And I doubt my siblings will be pleased if they don't get a fair chance. She seemed more curious than anything, as if this wasn't an argument against my idea but more of a query. Well, I happen to have an idea for what you could do, I said, letting some suspense set in before continuing. A royal election. It's not like succession laws haven't been abruptly changed in the past. Camilla seemed to think about it for a bit. But she still looked distrustful. I can also pull some strings that might help us achieve that goal, I said with a small smile. Mama's looked beyond ecstatic that I was supporting her. She wasn't even questioning what type of connections Random Hunter could have. Camilla and their aunt, on the other hand, were still quite skeptical, but they still seemed to be drawn into the idea. After that, a few more words were exchanged, just to fill the empty air as we all pondered on different things. The meeting ended with an agreement. 2 of them wanted to end the conflict whilst the other only pretended to want that. Camilla is quite a decent actor, but she can't fool me. As I said, she's likely the only ambitious competitor in the meeting. We have yet to decide on a way to go. They said they'd much rather try to gather more of their siblings into the scheme. I obviously won't offer to just go and kill him, even if that would be quite easy for me. As I said, I want to see how mamas will handle this. But if things don't work out, I will protect them. Even Camilla, she may have a personal agenda, but she's now part of our group. Although, I won't hesitate to pluck her head off if she ends up betraying us. Which is quite unlikely, especially considering the looks she keeps giving me. Camilla was to anonymously announce her brother's death. All of us left before anyone appeared to clean up the bodies. From what I understand, most people should be investigating the random knives that pierced through half of the ship. Thankfully, it was a small knife, so it didn't do much damage. And just like that, the meeting was done. We were left to come up with a plan to assassinate the king. And I have a few ideas for that. Just in case Mamas doesn't get any ideas in the next few days. _POV Ashton _ A few days have passed since the forming of the alliance against the king. Mamas and Oido, the woman with the child who I eventually learned the name of through Kurapika, have been thinking of ways to take out the king. Neither of them is experienced plotters or assassins, so they are having some difficulty. Camilla is off doing her own thing. She's not really been attending the meetings, but that's fine. At least she's not opposing Mamas and Oido. The two of them seemed quite hesitant about this whole ordeal. It took me reminding them what was at stake here to make them concentrate. After all, one is fighting for the life of her siblings whilst the other is fighting for the life of her child. This isn't a cold-blooded plot to kill a benevolent king. It's a necessary evil, a ploy to get rid of a heinous and narrow-minded tyrant. That realization eventually set in for them, as they started getting more serious about things. They have a few methods in mind, but they don't know how to keep the blame away from themselves. Especially since the king is guarded and under surveillance during most of the day. I reassured them that I will properly take care of covering up their tracks regardless of what method they used. Even if Mamas walked up to him and stabbed him in front of a crowd, I'd still be able to salvage things. Although I'd be disappointed if that was her actual plan. I can come up with a few ways to kill him right now. And that's without acting myself. After all, with the amount of dirt I have on him, turning his servants against him would be extremely easy. Unwavering loyalty always breaks when the people are faced with the true face of the one they idolize. "How do I look?" asked Mamas, showing off a ball dress she put on for tonight. "Amazing as always," I said with a genuine smile. She blushed and returned to combing her hair. I dressed the same as always. I do make a point to always be presentable. Every occasion is a special occasion, I guess. Yep, a ball is being held tonight. This is also a night before our last stop in Lake Mobius. Suffice to say that things around the ship haven't improved all that much. It seems some of Cheadle's efforts paid off in the end, as she managed to convince a few doctors to help in the lower tiers. I've been kept up to snuff on all of this by Kurapika, who hasn't shown even a shred of distrust towards me or the Alliance. Kurlo hasn't contacted me again ever since. I think he already got what he wanted from our meeting. And, honestly, with my latest project, he will also be quite helpful. I don't hold any grudges on my former student, but he knows what game he was getting into before he even started playing. He should be prepared to pay the price. As amusing as guessing his thoughts and plots is, being considered a pawn on someone else's chessboard is annoying. Oh well, I have quite a few things prepared for tonight. And, from what I understand, so does Mama's. Tomorrow is the day. The plan she devised with Oida will be carried out. Today, the banquet is preparation for that. During this entire time, we've only been able to attract 2 other candidates to join our small alliance. They are twins actually. Their names are Fugetsu and Kacho. The former is a timid sort that doesn't really want anything to do with the succession war, and the latter is the opposite in personality. Kacho is always putting up an arrogant and haughty facade. Someone like me can easily see through it. She claims to want to become king, but all she actually cares about is the safety of her twin sister. This is why she joined this alliance with the hope of bringing this to an end. There are a few problems, however. The twins can't really help all that much with planning. One is too timid to take the life of her own father and the other won't do anything without her sister. At least on the surface. I still remember my little talk with her. It was right after they joined the alliance. They said they were in for the idea of stopping the war. But Fugetsu was terrified of the way we presented them. In the end, they decided to become part of our group. But only for protection, as they weren't comfortable going against the king. However, after the talk was done, Kacho remained around for a second and spoke to us. I want to protect my sister. If you need me, tell me. In secret. After saying her piece, she left after her beloved sister. Her haughty facade was nowhere to be seen. Only determination and readiness remained. After all, this is the best chance she has at securing her twin sister's life. She's definitely more than she lets on. She realizes that the only way to end the war is to kill the king. She also knows how to be discreet. Something people seem to have trouble with these days. She approached me in private so that she wouldn't concern her twin sister. So, in Kacho, we have a useful ally, and in Fujitsu we have another supporter. They will both prove valuable in time. Mamas is actually implicating Kacho in this plan. Oita is also a corner piece from what I've understood. As for her actual plan, creating a distraction to lure in some of their father's bodyguards and attaching a parasitic Nen beast on them, commanding them to kill the king. It's a decent plan. But too many things can influence it. It's not really what I would have chosen. First off, controlling a normal bodyguard might not be enough to take out the king. But they can't really do that to the king's main bodyguard, as that man is quite a bit more powerful than the first prince. He would be impossible to control into doing that. He would also notice whether or not he was being attacked by a Nen beast. That main bodyguard is also the reason why this plan might fail. He always seems to be vigilant of his surroundings. I've been tailing him for a bit and the king by extension. They are always together. The man also has a strange sleeping schedule. He only sleeps for around 3 to 4 hours a night, during which 3 men are randomly chosen to take over his duty. I relayed this information to Mamas. She was really pleased with it, but it also brought in another variable that I dislike in plots: luck. We need to control the right bodyguard, one of the people that the chief exchanges with every night. And, since they are randomly chosen, doing so is extremely hard. I can't help but think that the king has already thought that his kin would try to take him out. Otherwise, all of this specific security would be hard to explain. Is he just a paranoid individual? Oh well. Time to head out. There's another meeting happening right before the ball. Only the ones taking part in the plan are gathering, including Camilla, who is also going to help in this plan. She will take control of at least 2 of the bodyguards. Now, I wouldn't want to be late, would I? _POV narration _ Unbeknownst to Ashton, but very much within his expectations, there was another group planning something big for this very night. The curtains were opening as the final act of this intricate and convoluted war of conspiracy and manipulation was coming to its climax. _POV narration _ The night of the ball was bound to be an eventful one. The Phantom Troop had been preparing for this moment for quite some time now. Killua was finally going to acquire the national treasure of the Kakan Empire, the Seed Urn. A powerful item that gave a member of the Kakan royal family a special egg. That egg would become a parasitic-type Nen spirit beast. It's said to have been fabricated by the first king of the Kakan Empire. That was the extent of the information Killua had on the treasure. If someone like Ashton were to be interested in it, he'd conclude that the Kakan Empire was in possession of a relic. Albeit a weaker one. But unfortunately, the old scientist wouldn't have the chance to catch a glimpse of it this night. He was too preoccupied admiring the ball, the stage to the intricate show he had created. The children going against their father. But the night was holding quite a few surprises. _POV Ashton _ The entire ballroom was looking at the princes, and Mama's was also a hot topic since she survived her assassination attempt. And by extension, so was I. I didn't want the king to recognize me so easily, therefore, I chose to wear a small face mask, which only covered my eyes and nose. One of those fancy masks rich people put on when they want to feel mysterious. But it will do just fine. As for why I have such a thing, I used to frequent a few rich people gatherings to both make fun of them and to talk to a few ladies. As I said, I rarely indulge in my desires, but I still do so from time to time. And doing something with a politician's daughter allows you to run it in his face for quite some time. Regardless, due to this mask, I am getting quite a few odd looks. And I guess that's fine, I am standing out a bit. But I would have stood out more if he came near Mama's and recognized me. The king isn't exactly a friend of mine, but he knows me a bit. He didn't recognize me during my warning at the beginning of the cruise. If he did, he would have sought me out. Quite a few Cretans came around and spoke to her. Royal families are always sought after in these scenarios. It seems Mama's also has a lot of suitors. Not all of them were quite smooth though. Some were stumbling on their words and some were admiring her from a distance. The same could be said about Camilla, she was turning even more gazes. Although no man had the guts to approach her. Ashton. Would you grant me this dance? I wasn't expecting such a thing from Camilla. She might just be poking fun at her suitors though. She'd much rather dance with a random bodyguard than them. But Mama somehow didn't seem pleased by the notion of me dancing with her tall sister. She locked her elbow with mine and said, "He's dancing with me first. Great, the sisters are fighting. And I'm in the middle of it." People instantly started whispering around us. Why must they make things so complicated? At least fight over me in private. "You are attracting too much attention," I said in a quiet voice. However, in my frustration, it was still louder than I had intended. It made people speculate even more. This type of back and forth brings a lot of attention to us. It also brought the attention of other princes to us. This situation is becoming such a mess. Mama's immediately pouted and turned her head, trying to drag me away. I'm getting a bit tired of being dragged around by her at this point. I yanked my arm away from her, not putting in enough force to hurt her, just enough to make her let go. I looked away, trying to ignore the hurt look on Mama's face. Camilla covered her mouth with her hand and laughed a bit. "It seems your bodyguard would rather follow me instead. Well then, let us dance." She extended her hand in a regal way and expected me to take it. I glared at her through my mask and tried my best to ignore her. At this point, most people were questioning who I was and how I dared reject two princesses in a row. I could feel the mob of admirers taking up figurative pitchforks and torches. Their gazes were burning a hole through the back of my head. At this point, I am also becoming uncomfortable. I readjusted my tie. I am not exactly into this entire banquet. One short, chubby girl with a round face and eyes looked at us curiously. Tyson, the princess that is known to desire every handsome man possible. Her servants are all good-looking men. "Oh, dear sisters, it seems like you are inconveniencing this handsome man. I apologize in their stead." She smiled, trying her best to look charming. "How about spending some time with me instead?" Her smile was odd. I guess she's cute in her way, just nowhere near her sisters. Although I'd much rather describe her face as annoying. And her personality seems to match. She is brash and confident in her actions, even though she's trying to pick up a man that looks twice her age. Even if I'm older than the country she was born in. Still, I gave her my best charming smile. Her face instantly turned red, same as every woman that saw it. I can't outright refuse her, that would make me look even more egregious. "I thank you for your kind offer, my lady. However, I must refuse. For now." She seemed a bit disappointed, but I gave her hope with the last part. At this point, everyone is looking at us, even the king. What a mess. Who would have thought disguising myself as Killua would make me so successful with the ladies? I used a special relic to change my looks, Trickster's Bag. This is one of its many effects. Not even I would be able to tell that my looks aren't natural. This is one of my most bizarre and most powerful relics. It's more like a coalition of many other relics stuck together. The ability I am using now is something that allows me to steal the appearance of someone else. All that is needed is a strand of hair from the one you wish to disguise as. Oh, and your Nen will be drained during the transformation. Same if you disguise others, it's still your Nen that will be drained. I technically own it, but Zig liked to use it a lot more. Even when covering my eyes, Killua was still a wanted man. I would still be able to pick up a few high-class beauties. And just like that, the first part of the plan is completed. _POV narration _ The plan had started as soon as the mamas and Camilla started speaking loudly to Ashton. Ashton was to act as the distraction in Mama's plan. He agreed to help her with this much. He took Killua's appearance to plant him in a location, just in case things went wrong. Even if he wore a mask, some people would still be able to recognize him. He was the only one causing the commotion. He created two clones using his cell splitter, disguised them using the trickster's box and constantly transferred his consciousness around to form the conversation. He was like an actor on a large stage, proving just how easily he could switch between three distinct personalities in the blink of an eye. His act managed to fool everyone, including the experienced servants that had spent a long time serving the royal family. Hell, even the royal family itself was fooled by his act. He had asked for information on the other princes in order to attract them to the show, and to not screw up his act as. He was so deeply concentrated on his act that he completely adopted the thought that the situation was real, conditioning his mind to see his clones as the real Mamas and Camilla. He had managed to attract Tyson quite easily, as she was just a man-thirsty simple-minded individual. The rest were just intrigued at why their sisters were fighting over a random young man. Whilst Ashton was distracting the people, including the king, Mamas, Camilla and Kacho would sick their parasitic Nen beasts on as many guards as possible. In the last meeting, they decided that they need to infect as many as possible if they were to raise their chances. This is why they also sought Kacho's help, who happily agreed to do her part in protecting her twin sister. They were currently luring in the guards using the opportunity Ashton created for them. However, the plan wasn't yet over the hardest part. Actually managing to infect highly trained Nen users will be difficult for the three girls to do alone. That is, if they were alone, but they had a powerful Nen user by their side. Kurapika was the one tasked with subduing the guards. His strength made this quite easy. He might not be a monster like Ashton, but he was still part of the Zodiacs. Meaning his strength was recognized by the association to be in the top 10. And he proved that he deserved that title with today's mission. He made short work of the highly trained guards. All of them went down in one hit, but that was the point, he was sneak attacking them after all. Capturing them and waking them up forcefully after the condition for the Nen beast was completed is the strategy. After that, their memories of the incident are muddied, making them misremember and forget what had happened in the last 10 minutes. They achieved that through a hypnosis Kurapika learned to use. The one that taught him that was none other than his long-lost ancestor, Ashton. It was performed using the dowsing chain, the one hanging from the ring on his ring finger. Its ball and chain-like appearance made it a good catalyst for a hypnosis technique. All he did was swing it from side to side whilst the person was still vulnerable, which is immediately after waking up, and subtly making them forget the last few minutes of their lives. It didn't allow for major commands, especially those going against their loyal mindsets. The four of them worked hard whilst Ashton acted even harder. His performance even attracted the king's attention, just as planned. After all, the king was the one that needed to be distracted. If he returned to his room, then the patrols wouldn't be just as relaxed. It would become virtually impossible to abduct them instantly unless Ashton did it anyway. But that would make the plan rely on him far too much. And he wanted Mamas to think harder, on her own. Develop into a better planner, which is an ability one should definitely possess if they plan to live in a royal court. She needed to understand the planning process so she might be able to realize when someone is plotting something against her. The distraction he was currently providing her was one of the two things he was willing to help with. The other one being the cover-up, erasing the traces of their intentions. Now, they were proceeding with infecting the guards, while something that Mamas didn't expect was happening in the ballroom. The king was approaching the disguised Ashton, as he was curtly refusing Tyson's advances. Mamas might have not expected this to happen, but Ashton sure prepared for it. And he was about to start the cover-up segment of his act. _POV Ashton _ The king. A sentient lard of human fat and with a thin mustache that has the fakest smile on this planet. I detest his very existence and despise the god that allowed him to spawn on the living plane. His smile may be fooling people, but it will never fool me. It's a strange combination, it's blatantly false to anyone that has put on a facade before, but it's still enough to fool the masses. My hands almost tremble and my nails almost sharpen instantly when seeing him. My desire to kill him rises every time he takes one more breath near me. Still, when I saw him approach me, I gave a cordial smile. His Majesty has graced us with his presence today. And say in the most polite of tones, I can't have my homicidal desires flood my mind and temper with my judgment. The lord smiled, acting all grateful for the introduction I've given him. But I can tell that his eyes are scanning every visible spot of my body. This is why I needed to disguise myself into Killua. He is a wanted man, the king is bound to notice something strange. And, by extension, his main guard too. The leader of the royal guard is tagging along with his king, studying me with wary eyes. He must be able to tell that I look familiar, but he is unable to put his finger on it. That is another ability of the trickster's bag, it makes people unable to remember if they've ever seen you before. It's only a momentary effect. After it fades and the captain thinks more about it, he will realize that I am actually Killua, the leader of the Phantom Troop, an infamous group of thieves. I don't really know the name of this man, but I don't care enough about him to find out. He's just a small piece in my puzzle. His testimony will be important later after the king dies. Oh, you're praising me quite a bit. My gratitude, stranger. However, I would like to inquire about your intentions with my daughters. He eyed me suspiciously. This pig. He suddenly acts like a caring father. He is actually just concerned that not saying anything would make him seem strange. Your Majesty, I assure you that I have no nefarious intentions in mind. Not for them anyway. You, however, will definitely die. This small meeting reminded me why I always hated him so much. Regardless of the success of this plan, the king isn't going to live through this little trip to my homeland. This is payment for attempting to colonize my home. I obviously haven't forgotten about that fact. Now, I think I've bought enough time. I see. Well then, I will still keep an eye on you, he said with a squinted eye. To others, it sounds like the king is looking after his daughters, but he is actually just finding me suspicious. He isn't stupid, he should be able to tell that something is amiss, just not in the way he thinks. Thank you for your attention, Your Majesty. However, I am afraid that I must take my leave, I said as I took a bow. I quickly exchanged consciousness to the mama's clone. What? You're leaving already? But we've barely gotten to know each other. Tyson also reacted in a similar fashion to my mama's act. And back to being Killua. I am sure we will have more opportunities to meet again, Princess. Until then. Before turning, I took one last bow to the king. And left, trying my best not to lash out and kill a few people right now. After that, I gave the message to Kurapika and the rest. Mamas and Camilla were to come and change places with my clones. Kacho was also going to need to make an appearance at today's ball. So they needed to hurry. But my part is already done. I will just head back to my room, Mama's room, and wait for a bit. I am not worried about her safety. Kurapika is strong enough to protect her and Kacho, and Camilla said she can protect herself. All we need to do now is watch as things unfold. _POV narration_. While Ashton was performing and distracting everyone, and Kurapika and the princes were infecting the patrolling guards. The Phantom Troop was also moving. Killua already knew the location of the treasure, which made things easier for him. It was located in a secret chamber, the only entry point being the king's room. As for how he knew of this, he had disguised himself as a guard, one of the ones tasked with protecting the king at night. He managed to do so while the man was heading for the king's room. The change was done quickly and Killua now had access to the king's room. Meanwhile, he sent one of the members to the security room to tamper with the surveillance footage. He had 3 hours to observe the room. That time was used to understand the layout. He managed to find it with luck, while also not rousing any suspicion from the other 2 guards. Now, the night of the banquet, he was to silently enter the room and steal the treasure. It wasn't heavily guarded, as it was supposed to be in a secret location. But the king's room was guarded. So, he used a distraction in the form of a corpse. A former patrol member that was unlucky enough to stumble upon Killua. He threw the corpse in the hallway and the people gathered to check on it, which left the door momentarily unguarded. That was the opportunity Killua needed to sneak into the room. There were more guards in the room, but they were taken by surprise and killed. Killua wasn't taking any chances of his face being discovered. He cleaned up the bodies using the copied Hatsu of one of his members. A vacuum cleaner manifesting itself in his hand and sucking all of them up. He temporarily stole her Hatsu for the smooth completion of this mission. After he cleaned them up, he opened up the secret entrance, a trapdoor blended into the floor and placed underneath a carpet. The carpet itself had been nailed to the ground. Killua carefully removed 2 of the nails and raised one side of the carpet in order to uncover the door. The treasure was inside. He only descended a flight of stairs and found it on a pedestal. There it was, the fabled seed urn. A large clay pot that also happened to have facial features. Conjured by the first king of the Kakan Empire. Capable of giving the members of the royal family parasitic Nen beasts. And it was now Killua's target. It was guarded by a laser alarm system. It was unconnected to the surveillance room. If it was to be triggered, it would alarm all of the royal guards instantly. But, the system wasn't something the professional thief was unaccustomed to. And he had the right assortment of Hatsus to overcome it. Using his bookmark, he copied 2 different Hatsus at the same time. One being the fun cloth that could shrink every item it covered to the point where it could be held in one palm. And Maki's Nen threads. The threads carefully grasped the fun cloth as it shrunk in order to get through the laser alarm system. The threads carried it over to the urn as Killua carefully controlled the size of the cloth to cover the seed urn. The national treasure shrunk and Killua carefully pulled it from the pedestal. His actions were slow and meticulous, as the gaps he pulled the threads through were extremely narrow. By the end, he was covered in sweat, but he still managed to get the seed urn. He kept his fun cloth activated to transport the urn with more ease. Exiting the basement and perfectly covering up the trapdoor in the exact same way was easy for him to do. But, by now, the guards were already back to their posts, as a cleanup crew arrived on the scene as well, making the situation a bit more complicated for Killua. He peeked through the keyhole, choosing one of the furthest guards, the one that wouldn't be noticed by the others, and teleported it to him, using another one of the many abilities he held in his book. Swiftly killing the guard, wearing its clothes and cleaning up the body in a minute. He silently left the room and calmly walked away, only getting a few odd looks for shirking his duty. And just like that, the mission was a success. Now, he just needed a cover-up, since people were aware of his presence on the ship. He needed to divert their attention to someone else so he could safely leave the ship the next day, when the last stop before the Dark Continent was to happen. And, he had already made the preparations. Ashton was the one he chose as a distraction. He knew that it was a dangerous gamble, but he doubted his old teacher was going to find out about it soon. All he needed was enough time to run away. He also didn't think his teacher would be in any danger. Even though he didn't actually care for him, at least, if he was found out, he would be able to claim that he didn't consider this situation to threaten Ashton. His plan was thought out. But he didn't expect to already be dancing in Ashton's palm. Him doing the robbery tonight was what the old scientist expected. This is why he disguised himself as Killua and departed early, leaving an impression on both the king and the royal guard captain. When the king found out about the stolen urn, and when the royal guard captain found the king's body, the first person they would think of would be the familiar-looking individual that attended the banquet. Therefore, while Killua planned to pin the robbery on Ashton, Ashton planned to pin the king's assassination on him. Everyone present at the banquet, and even the alliance between the princes in order to kill the king, they were pieces on Ashton's board. It was Ashton's way of showing his former student that playing chess games with him was a dangerous pastime. _POV Ashton_. The scene is progressing about as well as expected. Kurapika returned alongside a tired Mamas. He looked at me with a smile. The plan was a success. At least this part of it. Now it's time to see what exactly it will achieve. Will the king die? Or will he somehow survive that guard's attack? I hope the attack happens tonight, but it could also happen tomorrow. As I said, I don't like playing dice. So I might have to tamper with the results a bit. I may have a plan for that. The infected guards are disposable after all. The guard captain is the one that chooses the ones to watch over the king for those 3 hours. And, tonight, one of the people he chose might be late. Therefore, He will send a replacement for him, which happens to be one of the infected guards. How exactly I will achieve this? Well, I will nab one of the guards whilst they are going to the king's room. Then I will use the trickster's bag and disguise myself as the captain, after which I will pick one of the infected guards. But would this be tampering too much with Mama's plan? Well, not really. Her plan would still happen regardless of what I do, I just want it to happen faster. Kurapika explained the details of their mission. They managed to infect a total of 11 guards. I asked for the description of a few of them, just to have backups. Kurapika seemed surprised at my query, but he still answered, giving me the appearance of a few of them. Ashton, why do you need this information now? Asked Mamas. She became a bit curious after hearing my conversation with Kurapika. Well, Princess, she pouted a bit when I called her that. I want the assassination to happen tonight. I will make sure that an infected guard reaches the king's room tonight. My smile seemed to annoy her a bit. But why is she annoyed? Why didn't you say that you were going to do that? We didn't need to harm and infect so many guards? Great, now we have a morality issue. Kurapika just sighed. He can probably guess why I did it. I already told him about my desire to make Mamas more self-reliant. I wanted your plan to have a proper chance of happening. If you knowingly rely on me for too many things, your planning might get a bit sloppy, I said in an even tone. She looked displeased by my reasoning. She clenched her little fists. I was hoping to not harm too many people from my own country. Couldn't you have just killed my father? She's quite foolish. What do you think this assassination is for? You need to learn how to do this yourself. I already helped you a lot. That was all I said. If she can't come up with her own answer to this simple question, then I won't waste my time on her anymore. Maybe I am being a bit harsh, but this girl needs to learn more. Being kind is a nice trait to have. But she needs to learn when to be kind and when to be ruthless. This entire succession war has already taken a lot more lives than this assassination attempt will. The guard doing it and the king will die, that's it. Yet, here she is, complaining at having hurt some of the royal guards. Kurapika seems to be getting a bit uncomfortable watching my squabble with Mamas. I feel a bit bad for him. He also did his best tonight. He even learned a new hatsu to prepare for it. Even if I am a decent teacher, one should keep his talent in mind. He is probably as talented as that Killua kid. At least in Nen. Mamas looked down, not wanting to meet my gaze. I understand. Sorry. Well, now she's upset with me. But I only want her to be ready. I have somewhere to go, I won't always be here for her. I don't think I'll be returning to this room tonight. A bit of a shame, but I doubt she'd even want me near her at this point. At least now I can confidently say that her judgment is no longer clouded by our first meeting. And the fake image she has built of me. It's better this way for her. I am not exactly the prime example of a human being. I am by no means ready for any type of commitment. Protecting others physically might be easy, but I am not great with my own emotions. I will leave my bed here. I don't really care for it anyway. I have a few more in my void space anyway. I'll be heading out now. The king must be going to sleep by now, I said as I left the room. Mamas didn't say anything back and Kurapika didn't really know what to do. He ended up following me for now. He likely wants to say something to me. After we were a certain distance from any room, he started speaking. So, are you certain this was the right thing to do? Well, I wasn't expecting that from him. I thought he'd be more concentrated on the troop. Who knows? But I will make sure she's at least safe. I've put a mark on her. It will allow me to know when she's in danger, I said with a small smile. Kurapika didn't really look convinced. I guess I did seem happy with her in the last few days. But, at the end of the day, I don't think she would have such a positive opinion of me if she knew what type of person I truly am. Especially if she got so upset at me letting one person die. She just fell in love with a character I played as. And I can't keep up a facade for far too long, it gets tiring. It's strange how I don't feel like lying to Kurapika at all. He may really be my friend now. But then again, this is also a friendship built on a lie. But that doesn't matter, I will make sure at least he is happy. A lie is sometimes everything someone needs to keep going with their life and to get over a tragedy. Eventually, Kurapika asked about the troupe though. Are you sure they acted tonight? I told him of my plan, as it also concerns him. About 80%. It's the last chance they've got. And, even if they didn't, I will still pin this on them, I said with a smile. I see, he said, probably thinking of ways the troupe could get out of this situation. He seems to be quite tense. I'll head over and make sure the proper guard's been chosen. You should get some rest for now. My smile seemed to relax him quite a bit. All right. He released a sigh. You also shouldn't overdo it, he said as he started walking away. I didn't waste much time. Turning invisible and heading for the guard quarters _POV Ashton_. I carried out my switching guards tactic quite easily. It certainly wasn't anything hard to do. The guard captain started his 3 hours of light sleep for tonight, leaving the king with the regular guards. But now, it's time to see if a guard can even kill the king. From what I know, the king is also an unuser, so this should be interesting. And yes, I do plan on watching it happen. Whilst invisible I can't really be detected, so I can just stand in the room and look at them. The guard entered the sleeping king's room and looked at him with a deranged smile. The other two were oblivious of this man's intentions. He rushed the king. The other two didn't have enough time to react, but they also rushed towards him, hoping to be able to protect their king. They weren't fast enough. The man reached the king's bed with his weapon already drawn and raised over his head. He lowered it quickly, trying to decapitate the king. But something unexpected happened. The king's guarding spirit beast, something I describe as an ugly abomination, caught the blade in its hands. I didn't realize he would be this careful, even in his sleep. I guess he is a bit used to assassination attempts. The spirit beast sure is handy. The other two quickly tackled the attacker, as the blade remained in the king's hands. He got up and yawned a bit. It's strange how easily this plan fell apart. Oh well, maybe making Mama's plot against a king this early in her career might have been too much to ask for. Oh, how unsightly, the king said in a pompous accent. I guess the only guard that can actually kill him is the captain. But that man isn't exactly as easy to control as these regular soldiers. Well, I could likely pull it off, but this is a bit too late for that. The two guards wrestled the man into the ground as the king slowly got out of bed, moving his fat body at a snail's pace. I took out my trickster's bag while still invisible. The bag looks like a primitive cloth bag. Out of it, I pulled a mirror. All I need to do is look into it and imagine who I want to look like. It's easy enough. I change into Killua once more as the king coldly commanded the execution of all the guards present through his phone. I think he contacted the captain. It would only make sense for that to be the case. The two men that just pushed the assailant away immediately looked horrified. I guess the king isn't as benevolent as they thought him to be. Oh well, I guess they did fail at their job since the king had to defend himself. But they didn't really expect one of their own to act like that. Overall, I find tonight to be the perfect time for a little assassination. I wanted to let Mamas deal with this, but she might get discovered after tonight. And that wouldn't really help me in any way. 5 princes are already under one banner. Oita's kid also counts. The king would likely kill all of them. For now, I will wait for the guard captain to appear around the corner before sinking my hand into this man's chest. I waited around for about 30 seconds. The guards that had failed their king were currently prostrating on the ground and begging for their lives. The king was just coldly looking at them. They had just killed the attacker in hopes that they would at least be spared. But the Lord was having none of that. I could hear footsteps quickly approaching the room, so I did what I do best. I took out a curved knife from my sleeve, slitting the fat man's throat before he even had a chance to realize what was happening. The Nen beast wasn't fast enough to protect its master. It tried its best to stop the man's bleeding. But as I heard the door open, I turned him to face me and plunged my hand into his chest and took out his heart. He looked at me in shock. He didn't seem to want to accept this outcome, but it's a bit late for that. I need him to die tonight, and I need little Killua to take responsibility for it. Your Majesty. The captain quickly rushed me, his fist already stretching to meet my face when I turned at him. I just tilted my head backwards, avoiding the man as he stepped on the bed and turned to face me. This time, he attempted to kick me. I met his leg with a kick of my own. His was the first one to give way, as it trembled a bit and he was forced to take a step back. I took out a bloodied knife, and threw it towards him, not putting enough force to actually kill him. He blocked it with his arm. It pierced his wrist and remained stuck there. It's the same knife I used on the king. I'm just leaving it to him as a souvenir since that's the polite thing to do. I kicked a table towards him. He quickly punched it, blocking his own vision momentarily. I used that split second to turn invisible. The other two guards couldn't even react in time. But the captain swiftly executed them for their incompetence after he realized that I was gone. I could feel his anger. It was quite funny to see him get so worked up. I guess he was fiercely loyal to that blob of fat. He also has no way of knowing what transpired here. The signs of our struggle erased much of the evidence that the king was attacked by one of his guards. I calmly left the king's room through the open door, not really looking back at the messy room. That's the king done. Now we need to see if the princes can actually give up on the succession war. Oh. And now I need to seek Killua and have a conversation with him. So much to do in so little time. But I can manage. The king's death will be announced in the morning, and the culprit will also be named. As the captain had a good look at my face. The last stop is supposed to happen in the evening, so there is ample time to take care of everything. I guess the princes can wait, for now. Kurapika also needs some closure on this Phantom Troop incident. _POV narration _ Mamas stood around in her room. To her, it felt a lot emptier than usual. An empty bed was placed in the corner of the room. Even though it was Ashton's, she always ended up sleeping in it too. And it made her feel strange that it was empty now. Sure, she wasn't pleased with the old scientist's actions. But, after thinking about it a bit more, she realized he meant well. It was a bit too late though. The weakness she had shown made Ashton doubt his actions and his support of her. He would keep protecting her, just like he said, but he would stay away from her in every other aspect. That's why, even though Mama's room was filled with luxury, it felt bleak. She hoped he would come back. Maybe his task was taking longer than expected. But she became more and more concerned after half of the night passed her by. Had something happened to him? No, that was unlikely. Ashton was strong, she had seen that with her own eyes. Eventually, she passed out, falling on her bed. The day had been tiring for her too. She drifted off in silence, hoping to be woken up by the door every minute. But that didn't happen. She woke up early in the morning. Her sleep not as restful as before. There was no source of warmth anywhere near her. Ashton was gone. And she didn't know what to do. Later, the news of the king's death was broadcasted throughout the ship, telling people the appearance of the killer and to be on the lookout. That made Mamas realize that the plan had succeeded. Well, not entirely. She knew there was no guard of that appearance between the infected ones. Which meant that Ashton needed to take care of things himself. Something that made Mamas extremely disappointed in herself. She was quite confident in her plan, especially after the first parts went so smoothly. She forgot to take into account her father's Nen beast. It was quite a critical mistake. If Ashton didn't kill the king, he would have surely snuffed out the infected guards, and he would have been able to tell which of his offsprings tried to kill him. Thankfully, now the attention was focused on another group entirely. But that still made Mamas uneasy. She took Ashton's departure as him also being disappointed in her. And, all she could do was sit there and cry. Her servants tried to console her, but there wasn't much they could do. She felt like she had ruined everything. including the relationship she had built with Ashton. It was short-lived, but she could confidently say that she loved him. She had no way of knowing that Ashton didn't blame her all that much for anything that was happening. He was just distancing himself from others, like he usually does. _POV Ashton _ The news of the king's death was sent out about as I expected. The hunters were quickly asked to take care of the phantom troop. But actually finding them will be difficult for the hunters to do. This ship was large and the vast majority of it was unguarded. It would take months to find their hideout, and they don't have months. They are not dull enough to believe that the troop will not depart this evening. Even if they do their best to stop them, cracks will still appear. And Killua is well known for not being caught. I surprisingly received a phone call. It's what woke me up. Hello. A timid voice, somewhat recognizable. Oh, it's the new chairman, Cheadle. Yes, good morning Cheadle. It's been a while, I said in my usual tone. I heard a sigh of relief from the other end. I guess she wasn't sure I was still using this phone number? I mean, this is my backup. I gave it to her just so she had a way to contact me. It would be a bit rude to just turn it off completely. It certainly feels like a long time. It's been quite stressful for me. Gods, I hope she didn't call to talk about her life's hardships. That's something Netero used to do. And he certainly took our calls like a free therapy session sometimes. Even though I might have needed a therapy session more than he did. I see. So, would you like to speak about this over a cup of coffee? I said in a friendly tone. I would love to. But there's not much time left. I need your help. Great, exactly what I expected. Why else would anyone ever call me? It's not like I have any other friend than Netero. Sure. What do you need? My tone didn't change, but its friendly nature is a bit more strained. I doubt she'd actually notice such a subtle change though. I'm sure you've heard of the king's assassination, she said in a frustrated tone. Of course I did. There's not much happening on this ship that can escape my ears, I said in a confident tone. I obviously realized something of this nature would happen. It's actually part of my overall plan. Wait. So you knew the king was going to be assassinated? Well, it's something I implied in my sentence. I'm glad I don't need to spell it out for her in a more obvious way. It's something I need her to know. Otherwise, Killua will use his connection to me to manipulate them into believing I had more to do with the assassination. That would make an innocent man like me look guilty. 1. Of course I did. But the Lord isn't really an important person to me. So I had no reason to help him, I said with a cold tone. Ashton. Please be careful. Those words might get you in trouble. Yep, this conversation is likely being tapped into. But here is where my political immunity comes into play. The old fucks, other members of the V6, already know of my capabilities. If I feigned ignorance about such a large act, then I'd look suspicious. Claiming to know about it and not doing anything about it might get some scrutiny thrown my way. But they can't do anything to me. Not over such accusations. As long as they have no proof of my murder of the king, then I'm golden. As for the throwing knife, the one I let the guard captain keep. The model I used to kill the king is the only one I had. The rest I have aren't that curved, only being small throwing knives. Don't worry your pretty head over that. It doesn't matter all that much, I said in a friendlier tone. I don't know if this was for her own safety or not, but she showed some concern towards me. I can appreciate something like that. It's been a while since I've had anyone be concerned about me. Mamas and Kurapika consider me too powerful to be worried over. I see. So, will you help us catch the culprits? There it is. It's going exactly as I told Kurapika it would go. Sure. But I'd like to have a helper for catching them, I said as a smile spread on my face. Cheadle calling for my aid and me asking for Kurapika as a partner is what I had in mind. This is going quite smoothly. All that's left for me to do now is to face my old student _POV narration_. It took a while for the guard captain to realize that the treasure was missing. The death of the king caused too much distress in the royal guard. But, eventually, he realized that Killua was known to be a thief. So he obviously had a target in that room. He frantically checked the trapdoor that held the national treasure, only to further panic after seeing that it was indeed missing. He was seething in anger, but he couldn't publicly state that the treasure was missing. It would put their kingdom in an even worse light. He needed to somehow retrieve it before it was found out. He gave the order for the hunters to hunt down the troop. But he was secretly hoping he would be able to find them himself to secretly retrieve the national treasure. The succession war needed to go on, regardless of the king's fate. And the seed urn was a necessary item for the war to continue, as it had a condition that prevented the participants from ever leaving, at least while it was still in process. The guard captain needed to make sure that the succession war kept going and that a new ruler would reach the throne swiftly. Otherwise, the lack of a ruler would weaken the nation and create a power vacuum that the other nations would certainly take advantage of. He could only hope that the troop didn't hide the urn too well. _POV Ashton_. After I finished my call with Cheeto, I called Kurapika and told him to meet me in the third tier of the ship. Right now, I am quite excited to reunite with my former student and see his face as every single one of his plans collapses. I mean, I don't actually hate him or anything. But he chose to start this. If he didn't add me to his plots I wouldn't even care about it. But here we are, or, here I am, about to murder or capture my former student because of his crimes. I guess I don't actually care about whatever he did to the Kakan Empire. But, for Kurapika to gain any closure on this matter, the troop needs to go. And I need to make sure they don't ever resurface again. Which means I can't spare them, not even in secret. I walked down to the lower tiers at a moderate pace. The hurry and Cheeto's tone didn't really affect me much. I already know where to find them. Even if they changed their location, I can easily find them again. The mark I put on Mom is the one that tells me of her state and location. I also put one on a troop member. And they are bound to be together at this time. Separating would only make them easy targets. The mark is actually an artifact. The ring stamp, or the tracker's blessing. All I need to do is touch something with the sigil in my ring and they will receive an invisible mark. From then on, I can always find out where that someone is, and I will always be alerted if something was to happen to them. The requirements are quite strange. The sigil needs to be fed a bit of blood from both of the targets. The member I marked is the one I beat into the ground when they attacked me. I made sure to do it secretly. The other two didn't have any way of realizing what I did, even if they knew of my relic. I did it too quickly for them to see it. Still, I can't help but wonder if I've reinforced my relationship with Kurapika enough for it to not be shaken by what Killua will tell him. I could kill Killua before he even spoke, but that would make it seem suspicious, like I had something to hide. And that would not be a great mark to leave on a friendship, even if said friendship is built on a lie. I met up with Kurapika at the entrance of the third tier. He was just standing there, impatiently tapping his foot on the ground. His eagerness is quite nice to see. But he's psyching himself up a bit too much. Stress isn't all that good for the heart. Hello, kid. Are you ready to hunt down some spiders? Did you bring pesticide? My poor attempt at humor still lightened the atmosphere a bit. Kurapika just sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose a bit. Wait, that's my move. I am usually the annoyed one. What happened? Oh well, I guess someone needs to take Netaro's role in the friendship. It's a bit concerning really. I don't want to consider myself similar to that guy. Hey, Ashton. Are we ready to head out? Wow, this kid really wants to hurry things along. Did the pressure the government's put on the hunters reach Kurapika too? Likely, especially since he's a member of the Zodiacs. You're no fun. But sure, let's head out, I said with a smile. Suddenly, a person shouted from behind us. Wait guys. I'm coming too. Oh, it's Cheeto. I guess it would make sense for her to come. This is quite an important assignment for the association. She needs to make sure things get done. Otherwise, the association might be blamed, either for failing to protect the king or to catch the perpetrators. Either way, solving this issue properly is basically her saving grace right now. Cheetle. Great to see you. Let's not waste any more time with pleasantries though, I said with a smile on my face. The three of us should be enough to take care of the troop. Well, I could take care of them by myself. But where's the fun in that? Alright. I'll follow you guys. I think she didn't really enjoy my tone. But then again, it's not like we're friends. We've only spoken a few times. I would say that her job has her occupied. But Netero seemed to have more free time than me, and I work on my own schedule. I guess this period is a bit busier though. Kurapika just raised an eyebrow at my quick exchange with Cheetle. But hey, personal matters remain personal. And just like that, the three of us started heading for the location of the troop. A quiet trip, we all seem to have our own thoughts right now. Killua is still in that same room though. And I can't wait to meet him again. _POV narration_. While Ashton was having fun and meeting up with Kurapika, Killua was standing around, thinking of ways for him and his group to escape from the mess that had ensued. He didn't expect things to go the way they did. Even if he tried to subvert the attention of his pursuers, they were no longer after an item. He couldn't trick them into believing Ashton was in possession of it. The death of the king complicated things infinitely. And the worst thing, Killua didn't even understand how or why something like that had happened. Few people that were present on the ship could have been able to assassinate the king, and even fewer could have stolen his appearance. One of the people that came to Killua's mind was Ashton. But, from his understanding, Ashton not only didn't have a way to steal someone's appearance, but he also didn't want to be involved in such conflicts. Well, he was unaware if his teacher had such an ability. But he hadn't seen him use one before. Which left Killua with the only other logical alternative. A stowaway that was extremely skilled. Likely disguised himself as a passenger and decided that pinning the blame on the troop would be the most sensible solution. At this point, he could only curse his bad luck. The circumstances matched too well, especially since the treasure that was missing was also in their possession. Even if the missing treasure wasn't reported, he knew that its absence must have been noticed by now. Killua realized that he had been duped. It left a sour taste in his mouth, especially since he also had no way of knowing who did it. Right now, he had gathered all of the troop in one place. They were deliberating, trying to figure out a way to leave the ship. The authorities would definitely be prepared to meet them. "Maybe we just proceed like normal?" asked Shizuku, or the vacuum lady, with a hopeful tone. The plan was to pin the blame on Ashton and disguising themselves as workers of the ship that was tasked with refueling the black whale. Not a horrible plan, but that would have only worked if the guards didn't have a 100% focus on them. Their current circumstances were not ideal at all. "No. It won't work," said Phaeton, probably thinking the same things as Killua. "Things aren't looking too good. But let's not lose hope," said Nobunaga, the oldest member among them. Everyone looked to their leader for guidance, but Killua was also stumped. He didn't know what to do. The only good thing that had happened was the chain user not attacking any more of their group. They also didn't manage to find him in their searches, which meant that the user was sitting around in the first tiers. Indeed, we've been in bleak situations before. We just need to figure a way out, said Killua thoughtfully. He could just keep hiding around, but he didn't want his group to reach the Dark Continent. He didn't know much about the place, but he had learned enough about the previous expeditions to realize that the late king of the Kakan Empire really downplayed the dangers of it. He didn't want to enter such an atrocious place. And he especially didn't want his troop, the people he cared about, to reach it either. So, they stood there, talking and thinking to each other, until the door suddenly opened, and a voice alerted everyone in the room. "See? I told you we didn't get lost." It was oddly melodic, but it helps a hint of mischievousness in it. Killua instantly recognized his teacher's voice. And the dots finally connected in his head. Just as Ashton entered the room with the chain user and the chairman of the Hunter Association by his sides, he suddenly realized just what had happened. His eyes widened as he wrapped his head around the entirety of the picture he had failed to see beforehand. He had been played by none other than his teacher. His plans had all been circumvented and turned back onto him, and his teacher was the one to do all of that. Ashton didn't even show a smidge of his malicious intentions in any of their meetings, bar the one in which he overstepped his boundaries. Yet, here he was, bringing with him what was obviously Killlua's enemies. The Chan user was already prepared for combat. In retrospect, he should have thought that Ashton would have some sort of grievance with the king after his warning during the presentation. And he should have realized that Ashton was acting a bit too helpful in the beginning. That had meant that his teacher had always been aware of his intentions. Something that frightened the young leader of the troop. His misjudgment and misplaced confidence had just led to a confrontation he knew the troop wouldn't win. _POV Ashton_. I opened the room and entered it. My associates were already prepared to fight the troop. All of Killlua's friends were shocked to see us, including the Zoldk's brothers. I already gave Cheeto clear instructions to not harm them. 10 minutes ago. Her reaction was quite bad. What? They are part of the group that assassinated the king. And you want me to just ignore them? She was quite mad at me. I made a quick clarification. Yes. You will ignore them. I wasn't asking, I was telling you that the Zoldks are not to be messed with. My assertiveness seemed to further annoy her. That's preposterous. It's going to bring more trouble to the association. Her ears were raised and her tail stood up. It was surprisingly amusing. The proper word for it is cute though. I can bring a lot more trouble to the association than the V6. Besides, no one needs to know that the Zoldks had anything to do with this matter. Only the three of us know that. She seemed to understand my point. Although she didn't really like the first part. I guess a threat doesn't work well when she doesn't know me all that well. But she seemed not to want any trouble. She accepted to leave the Zoldk brothers out of it. After all, they were just two people. And killing them would also bring the ire of the Zoldk family, which was never a good idea. Back to present. Oh wow. The atmosphere in this room is quite strained, I said with a cheerful smile, my cold eyes betraying my facade. I scanned the room looking at the shocked and angry faces of the troop members. Killua himself just stood there, wide-eyed and looking into the table. I guess he's realized who the killer is, huh? A bit too late. Time for the theatrics to ensue. _POV Ashton_. The standoff was a bit strained. We didn't have much room for a proper fight where we are now. So this will definitely cause some damage to the area. What a mess you've gotten yourself in, Killua. To think you'd have the gall to assassinate a king, I said whilst shaking my head. He gritted his teeth, looking at me with hate. His book instantly appeared in his hand. I guess he doesn't want to talk anymore? Then Kurapika won't really get to hear more about his clan's massacre. I doubt he'd listen to much in the chaos of a fight. He's got quite the gall, I can at least acknowledge that. To think he dares to raise his hand at his teacher. I dashed forward, a blade quickly met my path. The swordsman of the troop was quick to extend his in the room and defend. So eager so weak I appeared behind him and kicked his side, putting in just a little amount of nen as my leg hit his guard, crushing several of his ribs and sending him flying through a wall. Threads gathered around me in familiar patterns. Seems like Maki is a bit mad. She effectively immobilized me, making sure her strings cut off my escape paths. Well, I could break them, but where is the fun in that? Illumi, Kalito, both of you should stand on the side. Neither of you has anything to do with this. One opening appeared on the web as the tall blonde man winded up his punch and rushed me with gritted teeth. Too bad, this is a team fight. Can't have all of them focus on me. _POV narration_. Finks was struck into the head with a ball and chain. Kurapika entering the fight with force as his chains tangled around with Maki's threads. Finks was sent tumbling to the ground. He had managed to protect his head with Nen at the last moment but was still rendered unconscious by the brunt force of Kurapika's chain. Phaeton was quick to intercept Kurapika, and he proved to be his match, as the two entered a scuffle and kept each other occupied, at least for now. The short man dodged around the small room as Kurapika twirled his chain around and whipped it towards Phaeton. Kurapika's chain broke open the wall to the hallway in seconds, as Phaeton also dodged outside, taking his fight out in the hallway. The breaking of the wall also revealed that Nobunaga had been sent through a few more walls than expected. Cheetah also entered the bout, engaging Bannolanov and Shizuku. As the chairman of the association enhanced her body with Nen and fought them without any issue. Her Hatsu was related to healing, but it also helped her boost her physical performance greatly, leading to her singling out two powerful Nen users by herself. Every time she got even slightly grazed, she would heal up instantly, as her Hatsu made sure that she was full of stamina and endurance at all times. That left the old scientist to fight against his former student and Maki. They were eyeing each other up cautiously. In the last few seconds, the three were caught in a stalemate, as neither was willing to make the first move. Ashton out of pride, them out of fear. Eventually, after seeing the sorry state of their group and the Zoldyck brothers not really helping, they were forced to act, only if to help the rest of the members. Maki quickly tried to entrap Ashton, but the scientist didn't feel up to it this time, grabbing the threads around him without any fear and pulling with force. He managed to drag Maki around and smash her into the wall, as she had failed to disconnect herself from the threads in time. The pink-haired girl smashed into the wall at great speeds, her back bending the cold metal wall as blood came out of her mouth in seconds. Ashton didn't waste any more time. He dashed towards Killua. He didn't showcase his full speed, but he was still fast enough to prove troublesome. Killua quickly acted, teleporting Nobunaga back to him, as the swordsman had barely recovered from his tumble, still holding his side. But he didn't let off, his katana sliding out of its scabbard as his sword cut into Ashton's path. His appearance was sudden, and a sneak attack like this would have worked on most people. But Ashton wasn't really a normal person. He stopped his body, only his previous momentum keeping him forwards as he became completely still. Nobunaga's blade passed through Ashton, much to the excitement of the swordsman, but his happiness was short-lived, as he realized that he had felt no resistance almost instantly. Ashton instantly resumed his movement after the blade passed him, his hand shooting up to meet Nobunaga as his finger dug themselves into his throat. Nanoseconds away from severing away his windpipe, but Killua managed to teleport his subordinate back to his side in time. The scientist looked at the two of them with a smile. The rubble around them gave him an idea. He kicked a piece of rubble towards them. Nobunaga, as injured as he was, still intercepted it without any fear, cutting it in half as it passed by the two and raised dust into the air. Killua almost instantly used Gil, but he was too late, as Ashton's hand was already into Nobunaga's chest, the swordsman dropping his sword in shock. The katana didn't even get to hit the ground, as Ashton kicked the blade, making it turning into the air until it faced someone else, and kicked its handle. Shizuku was about to swing her vacuum towards Cheetah once more, but her instincts instantly flared up, as a blade almost reached her side in seconds. Bannolanov managed to deflect it, only gaining a slight cut to his gloved arm. Thankfully for them, Ashton hadn't put any nen into the blade. But that action had distracted them, and their standstill with Cheetah broke, giving her an opportunity to punch Shizuku's chest and send her flying through a wall. Killua might have been able to teleport her to him, but his vision and attention were obstructed by Ashton flinging Nobunaga's lifeless body towards him. He caught it with both hands, looking at the body with empty eyes. He raised his gaze at Ashton, his hatred was unveiled as he placed one of his hands on Nobunaga's body and cloned it. Gallery Fake was a move that Killua used in his fight against Hisoka at Heaven's Arena. It allowed him to copy the things he touched. He proceeded to make a few copies of Nobunaga's body. Ashton just looked at him with a smile, as he started to hum a melodic tune. The showdown between teacher and student was bound to end with one of them losing their life. _POV narration_. Ashton stared and hummed as his student filled the room with his friend's corpse. It was a curious choice, but the old scientist was never one to judge. He leisurely hummed, watching things unfold around him. Cheeto was slowly beating Banolanov into submission, as she was a lot more resilient than him. Kurapika and Phaeton had been caught in a standstill for a while now, but they weren't in Ashton's field of view. Their fight had brought them further down the corridor, breaking most of the walls in their paths. Using his book, Killua took out yet another Hatsu, order stamp. Whatever object had a head and was considered lifeless by the user would be controlled by him. All he needed to do was touch their heads with the stamp. The puppets would only be able to listen to basic commands and would refuse to do things they used to be against in their past life if they had any. It was a useful ability. And, coupled with the 80 clones of Nobunaga's corpse, Killua had managed to make a sizable group. All of the broken down walls around them managed to create quite an open area, allowing Killua to make a good amount of puppets. But then, Ashton had finished his ritual. As he finished humming, a structure made out of Nen slowly molded itself into existence, as the old scientist stared with glee. The carnival music slowly filled the area as Cheeto and Banolanov were instantly distracted by this strange occurrence. They weren't expecting such a bizarre thing to just appear in the middle of the room. A decently sized merry-go-round. Thankfully, the ceiling was high enough. But, its appearance coupled with the small army of puppets made the space quite cramped. The horses of it spun around, jumping up and down cheerfully. All of their riders were lifeless except for one. It jumped up, dancing in the air and landing away from the carriage. Its face was one Killua could easily recognize. Its body was just that of the doll, but it was carrying Hisoka's face, a forced smile stuck on its lips. Killua wasn't one to be afraid of such things. But it was still unnerving to see his former opponent appear in this form. Illumi and Kalito, who had been standing by the side, were also quite shocked. But they only found it interesting more than anything. Especially when it started spitting out cards randomly, throwing them around and cutting up the puppets that Killua kept making. Now, the condition was that the carousel couldn't kill, but the puppets weren't considered living, as they were just bodies controlled by Nen. The puppet entered the crowd, its small body dancing around the puppets in skilled moves, perfectly replicating the style of the person it had stolen the face of. Punching puppets left and right, sticking his bungee gum onto them and throwing them around. Ashton just watched a bit. Slowly, the puppet was being defeated. Eventually, one of Krillo's puppets exploded, sending the little clown flying away. This was another one of Krillo's copy Tatsus. Using the bookmark, he was copying it alongside the order stamp, which was controlling his Nobunaga puppets. The sun and moon consisted of attaching two symbols to targets. When the two symbols touch each other, they would explode. Killua had managed to charge a few of those symbols to explode on a decent scale. But he didn't have enough time to mark too many of the puppets. Ashton didn't make a move to help out the struggling clown. But the ride revved up. The horses started spinning violently, their heads twirling around targeting Killua, who tried his best to hide in the crowd. But the horses didn't seem to care about such methods. Their mouths dragged themselves open as they started spitting a variety of weapons towards Killua. This time, one of the horses was also spitting out playing cards. The projectiles tore through the crowd as they tried to make their way towards Killua. But the bodies of the puppets managed to stop most of the barrage. Not easily, mind you. The projectiles were coming towards Killua in strange patterns, some curving unnaturally in the air and striking from different angles. The Zoldyck brothers watched with intrigue as the rusted carousel ride sung its melody and ripped apart the corpse puppets with cold steel. Killua was starting to get more and more concerned by the situation. He had no way of helping his friends, and he had little control of the fight he was currently in. He could only hope Phaeton would finish his bout with the chain user and come to his or Banolanov's aid. What he didn't expect were threads to start gathering around the spinning death trap, slowly clogging it up and making it slow down exponentially. Maki had somewhat managed to recover from her daze. Her threads were slowly breaking as she kept creating more to stop the merry-go-round from spinning. She didn't keep the threads attached to her body, as she would just be sent flying once more if she did. But Ashton wasn't going to let her get away with her actions so easily. He wanted to see how his new Hatsu would fare against Killua, but he hadn't designed it to fight multiple opponents. So he would need to take care of the ones that intervened. He rushed at Maki. The pink-haired girl panicked, sending threads in Ashton's direction, trying her best to connect his body to the merry-go-round. Ashton sidestepped and dodged most of the attacks sent his way. Then someone else rushed in. Finks had finally regained his consciousness and decided to help out his leader. He had already winded up his punch a lot in preparation. Now he rushed Ashton at full speed, intercepting him before he reached Maki. Finks extended his fist, punching towards the old scientist with aggressive force. Ashton simply jumped over him, using his fist as support for half a second and reaching the blonde man's back. Finks was about to swing his fist back around, but Ashton grabbed his collar and dragged him backwards, tripping him into the ground and using his free hand to try and stab his heart out. It was quickly tangled up in threads, as his fingers only managed to reach the lower side of his lungs before being pulled backwards. Ashton lacked enough stability to pull back towards the threads, so he just spun in the air and threw a knife towards Maki. A cop's puppet quickly blocked the knife with its body, as a few of them had started to swarm the location when Ashton started dashing towards Maki. The blocking was successful, but what they didn't expect was the knife to explode after a second, sending Maki flying back into the wall and disabling a few puppets in the process. Finks quickly wound up his punch once more and tried to hit Ashton's head. Ashton was still in a backwards motion, but he didn't need to be grounded to dodge the attack. He bent his neck backwards. As Finks's fist passed right above his nose, he used his backward momentum to whip his leg around and sever the blonde man's windpipe. Blood gushed out of his fresh wound as he tried to hold it closed, but he couldn't do anything to help with the slowly decreasing oxygen supply his brain was receiving. That led to him collapsing on the ground, still holding on to his neck with a desperate look on his face. The merry-go-round had already started spinning, as Maki was busy regaining her composure after being violently thrown into a wall. The barrage of cold weapons kept up, making Killua go on the defensive once more. Ashton just smiled a bit, as he slowly walked towards Maki. The smile on his face terrified the pink-haired girl. His cold gaze told her everything she needed to know of her fate. He grasped her neck and held her up, looking her in the eyes as she thrashed around, trying her best to escape the clutches of the madman in front of her. "Good night, Tilda," he said, as her struggle eventually died down. He dropped her corpse on the floor, leaning on the battered wall as he watched his former pupil's performance. "This isn't all that shabby, Tilda," he thought with a smile. _POV Ashton_. I looked at the fighting happening around me, taking a moment to relax amidst the chaos. Killua was still being overwhelmed by the blood-soaked carnival, and he would slowly lose, as the Hatsu keeps gaining more and more momentum. Although he is lasting a lot longer than his core did. But that might just be because he has meat shields around him. Although, eventually, these corpse puppets won't be fast enough to block the projectiles. And if they formed an actual wall, they would just be shredded to pieces in a few seconds. I looked at Cheeto, who had managed to kill the mummy, her fist caving his face in. The vacuum lady was still quick to try and keep her busy once more. But she seems to be a bit too injured to keep up with Cheeto, who is still in pristine condition. As for Kurapika, I silently extended my hand to observe his fight against Fei-Fei. It was quite bloody. Fei-Fei had both of his hands broken, he was wearing a non-red armor and Kurapika had some burns covering his body. The two of them seemed to be quite evenly matched, at least that's how it seemed for a second. But Kurapika managed to heal most of the serious injuries that were dealt to him, leaving him only a bit tired, whilst Fei-Fei is trying to fight through his broken bones. The fight was obviously in Kurapika's favor. I then looked at the Zoldyck brothers, who much like me, were leaning on a wall, observing the situation. Kalito seemed to be quite excited when seeing my new Hatsu. I guess he's a bit more bloodthirsty than most. Illumi had the same empty, cold look on his face. I guess they weren't all that deeply attached to this merry group. That's fine though. I guess they both had their own missions and objectives when joining the troop. After all, a Zoldyck would have no actual reason to join a group of thieves like this. Well, that's enough analyzing the situation. I don't want to waste any more time. Cheetal and Kurapika are about done with their opponents too, and I don't feel like falling behind these young ones. I dashed towards the crowd of corpse puppets, dancing around them as the projectiles of the merry-go-round kept them occupied. Killua likely expected me to attack him at some point, as two of the puppets attacked me at the same time, both touching their hands together, and they exploded right in front of me. I ran through the explosion, completely ignoring any damage the heat or the impact of it would have been able to deal me. I just covered my body with a bit of nen and pushed forward. My most favorite Hatsu revolves around explosions. I can obviously tank through such weak explosions. There were a lot of puppets between me and Killua, but he couldn't really use explosions in this zone, as that would harm the meat wall he has fashioned. I think he's still making new puppets and trying his best to tire me out in some way. But I'm not even winded yet. This has been more of a warm-up than anything else. I grabbed one puppet by its head, injecting it with my explosive parasitic nen and threw it in the crowd. I don't think prolonging this fight will benefit me in any way. The puppet caused an explosion twice as strong as Killua was able to produce. It shook this part of the ship, as the battered walls were further brutalized by body parts. It blew away half of the puppets protecting Killua. As the merry-go-round started spinning faster and faster, its projectiles threatening to tear him apart. He did his best to dodge, but he was quickly overwhelmed, as the puppets could no longer protect him. I watched as the merry-go-round played around with his life, knives, bolts and playing cards, repeatedly digging into his flesh and avoiding hitting any of his vitals. The carnival music was getting progressively louder the more of its target's blood it drew. It was also being distorted by screams that sometimes interfered with the audio. Specifically, it was a single man screaming that kept echoing, in rhythm with the cheerful carnival song. This is actually quite odd. I don't remember programming that part in. I guess it developed this aspect on its own. This is weird since I didn't really give it much sentience. Or maybe I gave it the ability to devour the blood of the people it impaled and absorbing their abilities in the process. That includes fighting styles, Hatsu and instincts. I guess autonomously, the blood-sucked carnival has also taken the intelligence of the target it devoured. This makes things a bit clearer. To think something this impressive came out of me in a month of boredom. Well, I didn't really plan for this to happen, but it did. Having an intelligent Hatsu isn't all that bad a thing. It means I don't really need to micromanage its movements or give it commands the way Netero did to the 100-type Guanyin Bodhisattva. Eventually, Killua was forced to his knees, just as the carnival ride stopped its spinning motion. I looked at him, as he tiredly let go of his book and stamp, all of the puppets falling to the ground as if their strings were cut off. He looked at me with hate, but he didn't say anything. Well, what outcome did you really expect? You already knew that fighting me wouldn't end well, I said with a cold tone. So, what gave you the confidence to plot against me? I tilted my head at him, visualizing my confusion, as my cold expression remained unchanged. He gritted his teeth. This is unfair. He didn't even have enough energy left for a conversation. Then I simply pointed at him, getting one horse on the merry-go-round to shoot off one last projectile. A hook, connected to the horse's mouth by a chain. It sunk to Killua's shoulder, pulling him towards the carousel with little effort. He could only look in shock as he was thrown upwards, his body refusing to listen to any of his commands. He was impaled much as Hisoka had been. The spike on top of the merry-go-round entering from one side and leaving the other. His blood spilling the exact same way Hisoka's had. But his face didn't hold any agony or fear. It was just filled with indignation and frustration. I looked at him, as he drew his last breath. I regret having to do this, but it needed to be done. My student went a bit over his head one too many times. The horse that had pulled him in quickly sucked up the blood, the empty puppet on top of it gaining a new face. One of frustration and indignation, a forced smile on top of it. The merry-go-round vanished into thin air. It had fulfilled its purpose. I guess that's that, huh? Let's see how the new chairman and Kurapika are faring. _POV Ashton_. I looked at Cheetle's side of the battle. She seemed to be almost done, having only the vacuum lady to take care of. While that was happening, I signaled to Illumi and Kalito, sending a knife with a little written message I have prepared for them. It was simple and polite. Get your SS off this ship or I will make you swim back home. I don't want any of Zig's descendants going to the continent after all this time. He's lost enough of his offsprings to the horrors of my homeland. One is more than enough. The two of them seemed to understand the message I had subtly sent written to them, and left the scene. Kalito even waved at me. I could see some annoyance on Illumi's face though. Oh well, I don't care about pleasing him. While this was happening, the vacuum lady seemed to be quite shocked to see the body of her boss fall limply on the ground. Cheetle dealt a swift blow to her, sending her into the ground. I don't know if she's dead or not, but she sure isn't getting up anytime soon. I slowly walked towards Cheetle. My spectacle seems to also have shocked her quite a bit. _POV narration_. Good job. You took two of them down, Ashton said with a friendly smile. Well, as friendly as he could muster after just massacring his Killua and his friends. Thanks. You seem to be able to handle yourself too, said Cheetle, a bit nervous in the man's presence. She found his way of fighting to be highly efficient, something to be praised, but his lack of hesitation just seemed off-putting to her. Of course, she was a hunter, so she wasn't all that bothered by it. But it left her off with an odd taste in her mouth. It also made her think back on his previous statement about him being stronger than all of the Zodiacs and beyond put together. She didn't really believe it wholeheartedly, but after seeing him not even get his clothes dusted while fighting a group of powerful Nen users, she changed her mind. Even when fighting two of them, she had been injured a couple of times. Even if she wasn't being completely serious, they were able to injure her repeatedly, if only due to their pristine teamwork. And that was still a feat. She was strong enough to be acknowledged by Isaac Netero himself after all. Ashton handled 4 of the members all by himself, one of them even being their leader. Cheetle had no doubt the man was playing around at some point. Especially when seeing him break Grillo's defenses in a second. He could have done that the entire time, he chose not to. And Killua was by no means weak. Cheetle even considered him to be on par with her. He was an exceptional fighter, even just judging by what she had just seen. Now, she was trying her best to keep a straight face. She needed some time to think about the events that had just occurred. Ashton could easily notice how uncomfortable Cheetle was. He just smiled a bit. Could you please go and help Kurapika a bit? His words seemed to break her out of her trance. She nodded and left after Kurapika, who was still fighting Phaeton. Ashton's smile vanished completely as soon as she was out of sight. He looked at Shizuku, who was still alive. _POV Ashton_. I didn't want any loose ends. Even if my plotting likely isn't known by her, I don't feel like taking that risk. Killing her in an obvious way would paint me in a bad light. Cheetah likely knows she didn't kill her with that last strike. But if she died due to an accumulation of injuries, then it's fine. I just went near her, tapped her abdomen with the slightest of force. Her already broken ribs dug deeper into her lungs, rendering her as good as dead. I then scanned the room with my eyes once more. Underneath the meeting table, I can find what I am looking for. A strange urn with a face. I assume this is the national treasure of the Kakan Empire. And, surprisingly, a relic. It's quite basic. But, from what Mom has described, it should be able to grant the royal family parasitic Nen beasts. which isn't all that shabby, and should provide enough protection against regular people. That train of thought is also why I decided against teaching Cheetah archery. She also seemed a bit unwilling to learn, so I didn't force her to do it. From her words, this item should only work with the royalty of the Kakan Empire. It must be one of the base conditions for this strange relic. It's by no means a strong relic, but it's also not all that weak. Especially since people that don't use Nen can use it too. Mamas barely knows anything about Nen. She had to learn a bit in our previous operation, but that's about it. I grabbed the urn. I don't yet know what to do with this thing. I guess I need to see if it affects the succession war in any way. I know just the person to ask for this too. The captain of the guard should know about that. The king must have at least told that much to his most trusted subordinate. I decided against placing the urn in my void space, as I don't really know if that will affect the competitors. I just held it in my hand for now. I also started heading for the corridor, where Kurapika's fight was almost coming to an end. Fei was quickly overwhelmed by Cheetah's appearance. It broke the stalemate he had barely been keeping up. A ball and chain smashed into his chest. He fell to the ground dejectedly. With the injuries on him, he should be dead. I doubt he will survive, but killing him now would be quite hard. I noticed something strange in Kurapika's eyes when he gazed at me. I guess he heard a few things from Fei. That shorty isn't usually the type to speak a lot. I wasn't expecting that. Well, I was already expecting something like this to happen, so I guess that's quite fine. Cheetah looked a bit curious about the random clay pot in my hands. But she didn't ask anything about it. You guys can wait around here for the cleanup crew. I have to go somewhere, I said in a simple tone. Kurapika didn't look me in the eyes at all. But I will have time to fix that later. Sure? Thank you for the help. I could hear Cheetah's meek voice coming from behind me, signifying that she also wasn't really comfortable around me. But that's not really important. I have to head for Mama's room. I need to call a meeting with the entire alliance.